Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 65 of the Avocado Games Cast. A lot has happened in the games industry over the past few weeks. Many companies and industry groups held their E3 replacement streams to, let's say, mixed success. But more importantly, these past couple of weeks have seen an outpouring of allegations of workplace mistreatment, bigotry, harassment, and sexual assault in games media, streaming, and development. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't address that issue, so today we're going to spend some time talking about it. What's happened, why it keeps happening, and what we as members of the gaming community can do about it. And after covering all of that, and whatever remaining time we have, we're going to give our impressions of the recent summer gaming streams, including the PS5 conference, the PC Gaming Show, and the Future Games Show. Anyway, I'm your host, Merve, and today I'm joined by anime enthusiast and must-live lover, Lutair.
Hello.
Actual games media person, Lovely Bones.
Hi.
And our editor and co-runner, the Kappa.
Hey, what's going on?
So how are y'all doing today?
Getting by.
Yeah, it's been a weird time for sure.
Yeah, it kind of feels like for the first time, like the quarantine and everything just kind of started to really bog down and weigh me down. I'm just like, I'm ready to get back to normal. Not so much I'm out there doing anything weird, but it's really starting to feel it.
Yeah, I mean, we've been under lockdown for, 3 months now?
Yeah.
2020 has been a weird year, for sure. Anyway, so I guess we should just kind of get right into it. And just let me say briefly a few things before we get to the main topic of the episode. So over the past couple of weeks, we're recording this on June 27th, by the way, numerous stories of harassment and abuse in all corners of the games industry, development, streaming, talent management, journalism, esports, have come to the fore. Just to name a few examples, there was a story of racist mistreatment of employees at Mixer, sexual assault allegations leveled at 2 Ubisoft higher-ups, stories of rape in multiple Twitch communities, employee abuse and sexual harassment at IGN, and of course, one of the earliest allegations, prominent games writer Chris Avallone was accused by multiple women of sexual harassment and assault. And these are just a few of the stories that have emerged over the past couple of weeks. And no doubt most of them will never make the homepage of gaming news sites because there are just so many of them. As of now, a spreadsheet compiling a list of allegations in the streaming industry alone that's reminiscent of something you might recall, Maura Donegan's Shitty Media Men list, has amassed 267 entries last time I checked. And I checked on Thursday, so a couple of days ago. It's probably higher by now. That's probably only a fraction of the incidents that have taken place in the games industry in recent years, and gaming certainly isn't alone in that regard. There are parallel reckonings currently taking place in the worlds of wrestling, comics, and comedy. And to me, two things are clear. Firstly, abusive behavior is all too common in our society, and moreover, it's often realized along existing axes of oppression: race, gender, and sexual orientation, among others. Secondly, it has to stop. As members of the gaming community, we can't turn a blind eye to it or sweep it under the rug. In order to stop a problem, you first have to acknowledge that it exists. So let me say unequivocally, the games industry has a problem with abusive workplace behavior. It has a problem with sexual harassment and assault. It has a problem with how it treats marginalized people. We can no longer pretend that these are just a few isolated incidents. These problems are systemic and in many cases emblematic of institutional rot. Let me turn to our little corner of the internet for a second. Our podcast, the Avocado Games Cast, has never been an explicitly political podcast, nor is it likely to ever become one. We're generally progressive-minded, but we accept an audience and a community of people with diverse views. We certainly don't expect our listeners to agree with us about everything or even most things. That being said, let me unequivocally state one more thing. If you don't think this reckoning is a big deal, if your reaction to these stories is that people are making mountains out of molehills or just making stuff up, If you condone or support sexism, racism, homophobia, transphobia, or ableism, if you're cool with toxic workplaces, sexual harassment, or rape, then we don't want you in our audience. And more importantly, we don't want you in the avocado community. There are 3 avocado site moderators on this podcast today, and I think they'd all agree with that statement. The baseline we're starting from is that there's a problem in the games industry, and it needs to be fixed. Only if we all agree on that bare minimum can we proceed. So, to that end, today we're going to be talking about the stories of mistreatment and abuse that have emerged, why things like this keep happening, and what can be done to stop them. This is going to be a heavy episode, at least for the first half until we switch gears. And so it may be distressing or triggering for some listeners. We usually include content warnings with our episode link dumps where appropriate, but in this case, I thought it was something that should additionally be stressed in the episode itself. And finally, before we dive in, and I open the floor to my very patient guests who are probably getting tired of my rambling, I should say that one of the things we're going to talk about today is accountability and how we can engender that in our communities. As for how that applies to this podcast, longtime listeners know that we often say very stupid things here. You know, we're just shooting the shit. We're not 100% informed about everything. It happens. It's understandable. But as the podcast host, I have to take responsibility for whatever gets said on here. If we ever say something on here that's downright offensive or cruel, that normalizes bigotry, that minimizes harassment or abuse, you do, as a listener of this podcast, have a right to hold us accountable and call us out on it. But I ask that you direct your concerns to me because, like I said, I'm the one who has to take responsibility. And I want to know if we're doing something wrong so I can fix it. Accountability starts locally, and hopefully this one small step on the long road is just one small step on the long road to building a better, friendlier, more inclusive community and industry. So that's kind of what I wanted to say to lead this off, and now we can kind of get into what's been going on. So there have been a lot of stories that have come out over the past, I guess, 10, 12 days. A lot of it's just kind of like playing out on Twitter and Reddit and other social media sites. Some of the big stories have been reported on games media sites. I'll admit I'm not shocked to hear any individual story that's coming out, but seeing it's all kind of coming out at once, like the games industry's own kind of Me Too movement, and it's also happening in tandem with reckonings in comics and wrestling and comedy. That's been surprising to watch. I don't know how you folks feel about that.
It's very overwhelming personally.
Yeah, for sure.
Taking in so many stories of abuse and victimhood and survival isn't really easy for any person, hopefully. But
yeah, this is going to sound awful because I'm centering myself here, but even like prepping the link dump for, not the link dump, the agenda for this podcast was a little draining, and obviously not even an iota as draining as what the people we're going to talk about today have faced. It was kind of, it did have an impact.
Yeah.
It was hard for me, like you said, I don't want to make it all about me, but personally what hit me or impacted me first is that this started and kind of took place majorly in a community that I'm very involved in, the Destiny community. That's kind of where it started. And some of the initial reports were, the Destiny community has a problem. And that was really troubling to see because I might have feelings one way or another about it, but it was where it started. And then to watch it kind of spiral out was like, okay, well, now we're absolutely talking about much larger issues. And then it kind of went from there to other places. So it was something to see at first. And I mean, having my ear to the ground on a lot of streaming stuff, some of it was kind of rumored, some of it was actually kind of known. And then to see it just kind of pick up the steam that it did and it should, was kind of fascinating because in one hand it seemed like, wow, this is about time some of this stuff happened, rather than I can't believe this is happening, which is what some of maybe the first, I don't know if we want to call it a wave, the first wave of Me Too that was maybe more focused around celebrities in Hollywood, seemed to engender as a response. You know, like, oh, I can't believe it was him. He's my favorite. And a lot of what I was seeing in response was, oh, he was a creep and everybody knew it. It's just, well, why didn't anybody do anything? Now, I think there are some valid reasons for why some stuff did or didn't happen to certain people, but maybe we can talk about that as a response to these types of things. But that was my most initial reaction was, well, if everybody knew, why did nobody do anything?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like, and a lot of these, it's because people don't feel like they want to speak out in the moment once they get some distance from it. Then they feel more comfortable. A lot of the what's coming out right now is stuff that happened 5, 6, 7 years ago, and it's good that it's coming out eventually.
There are a lot of factors that pile on for victims, socially, legally, just institutionally, just a variety that make talking about this harder.
Absolutely,
This is the environment that we are in.
Yeah, and you can't discount the social factors. In some cases, you can't discount the legal factors where people are just legally barred from talking about certain things because they signed an agreement and everything was handled quietly.
NDAs and severance agreements and all sorts of things. We've talked about that before on this podcast with like the riot lawsuit and such.
Yeah, so it's been it's been weird to see so much come out in one go, and it in some ways it feels like kind of a necessary exorcism almost in a way, but I would bet that this is kind of like the tip of the iceberg and there's a lot more.
I agree.
Something that was like kind of shocking when you look at the list of links in the agenda is just sort of the penetration of the community on like every layer, and even someone with like what I would consider a small amount of power, abusing that power in order to be a monster. It's almost like less surprising when a CEO is a monster to me than when some minor celebrity or some streamer. It's just like in some ways a CEO is less relatable, but by their nature streamers are more relatable. And then when you find out that like a surprising chunk of people are just behaving in this kind of way, it sucks.
One of the things I maybe wanted to get a little bit into is just so everybody's clear, because I know not everybody's as involved in streaming it, is to kind of show some of the power that like those larger streamers have, because it's legitimate in some cases. A host can make or break you on Twitch. It's very hard. I know numerous small streamers who are struggling to get what they call on Twitch partner status, right? Partner status is where you get extra emotes and you get a better cut and you get a higher quality stream. It's basically when you've made it on Twitch, for lack of a better word, right? One of the requirements on Twitch, and I think most would agree this is the hardest part, is you have to hit 75 concurrent viewers for a certain amount of time. I think it's a week, 2 weeks. That part's kind of in flux, right? So when you start to hear about some of the power imbalance that even smaller streamers in that case can, hold over people, that type of host of 200, 300, 400 viewers can be make or break for that small streamer, which is what you see time and again in some of these accusations. Is there's a lot of like, well, I can help you and here's what I can do. So that part of it is legitimate, and I think something that maybe Twitch needs to look at, as a function of how they do and don't choose partners. But like you're saying, I think that one of the things that a lot of people might not have taken away is, do these people even really have that kind of power? And weirdly, even a small person, even a person who's not that well known, yeah, they do. So that's where you get some of the power imbalance that leads to some of these actions, I think.
Yeah, and the other thing that's important to keep in mind is that the kind of like legacy games media, which is most of what we're engaged with, is kind of hasn't kept up with the evolution of Twitch. And so a lot of what we read about and what's notable to us is not necessarily what's really influential in the world of gaming. And to its credit, mainstream games media has started covering streaming a little more. But we do kind of have this skewed perspective of the streaming being this very kind of small potatoes thing. But there are a lot of people who are not super well known to us who are very well known within those communities.
Yeah, I can say it's, and I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but I'm sure there's other people who come from a similar place. I just want to say thank you for providing that context, Kappa, as someone for whom the stories that came out of Twitch are like the most difficult to follow and difficult to understand. And I just know and understand less about them by nature because I'm not connected to that industry. Being aware that there's an actual like specific streaming ecosystem of dependency on partners is a hell of a thing to learn.
Well, I think one of the things that's important about that to understand too is because a lot of there's always a lot of pushback and a lot of they're doing it for their career. Or this person isn't somebody who could really shut somebody out of an industry or think, that was kind of in the Me Too movement when it first started in Hollywood. That was a lot of the responses, right? When you would hear stuff about, I don't know, Louis C.K., for example. Oh, well, he's not like a make or breaker in the comedy community. He can't, but he is, right? And even a small streamer.
But also someone doesn't have to be that powerful to still be able to abuse power and wield power.
100%. I'm just like as an example of like a counter argument, I guess would be in the streaming community that yes, even a smaller streamer with a couple hundred viewers, or even Twitch staff who only organizes a certain number of things, or for example, there was a media group like an agency that represented certain streamers. If you got into that agency, you were almost guaranteed to be a host of these bigger streamers who would drive people to go see you. So I guess what I was trying to get to earlier too is it feels like there's an older style here at play of sexual assault and harassment that feels to me like, I keep thinking insidious is like the right word, where it's very much like I can do things for you in your career if you, and to me that doesn't feel like something new. That actually feels like something very, very old and in a bad way, right? In the worst way. It seems like there's a lot of this going around and a lot of these accusations where he said he could help me. He said he could do this. He said he could get me there. If I just went on this one date with him, I'd find myself partnered the next time I logged in, or I'd find myself, with a 1,000 viewer host, or at the next panel he went on at PAX, I'd be on the stage with him. That's career defining moments for people. I think very similar to what some people might have in mind about what happens in Hollywood, in terms of I can get you this role, fill in the blank. And so seeing that happen in the streaming community in some ways makes sense, unfortunately, because of what we've been conditioned to think about in terms of these things. But at the same time, I've seen a lot of people who aren't as familiar with streaming being like, oh, he's only got 100 viewers. How could he be any help to her career? That doesn't make sense. And that's something I'd really like to refute. And as someone who knows and follows and sees a lot of small streamers trying to get there, it makes way more sense if you're involved in the community to know exactly how bad or how much they want those types of things to happen for some of the smaller streamers.
Yeah, it's very like you said, old school, exactly what you'd expect to happen in Hollywood, or even elsewhere. We've all heard, you do this for your career.
Casting couch has been an offhand joke, a joke in quotation marks that people have been comfortable making for decades.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what this is in a lot of cases. But I'd also like to mention that it goes beyond that casting couch mentality. A lot of the stories that have come out over the past week or so have been just plain old abuses of power.
Yeah,
that
definitely.
with like no gain really to the perpetrator.
Workplace environments are just centrally toxic and harmful in a way that has no implications in that sense of exploitation, just harmful for its own sake, quote unquote. Like Ubisoft, like the stories that come out of Ubisoft are fucking insane. I say that as someone who reads stories of survivors like on a very regular basis for personal like reasons of connection. Like holy shit.
Yeah, like what was happening at there are at least 2 execs at Ubisoft who are implicated in assault, and one more who's implicated in infidelity and misconduct. And it doesn't seem like they got how I put this. They're not kind of exploiting the same kind of power imbalance. Like they're not saying I can help your career. They're just assaulting people.
Just creating a hostile space.
And the power imbalance is more like their ability to have gotten away with it until now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, you have perpetrators who don't seem to be getting any material advantage out of what they're doing, like at the toxic workplace environment that used to be there at IGN, where employees were sexually harassed. Curiously, it was actually male employees in this case who were sexually harassed, and other employees were abused and harassed in other ways in the workplace. And it's not clear to me what people get out of doing that other than a power trip. But really, I think the commonality across all these things is an abuse of power. Whether they get something out of it or just the thrill of abusing their power, it is an abuse of power.
Yeah. Broader stories of like discrimination and just like discounting of people out of IGN as well. Like a woman who I have followed relatively recently because she was involved in like Soulsborne quote unquote coverage. Like she literally did the IGN review of Dark Souls 3, but she wasn't allowed to do any video coverage, any like audio, like speaking about it on recording, because they felt that they felt that having a woman represent Soulsborne coverage was bad for some reason, which is fucking insane.
Wow.
But she was still the expert on the staff. She was still the person who had to give all the info to another person, and that person got to be the face like on the screen, just for no good reason.
You know what? I think one thing that kind of struck out to me, and kind of off that point, and it's a good one. One thing that stuck out to me is a lot of the communities where this happens, I think, are communities that I thought tended to be a little bit more diverse in terms of, having different genders represented or different,
I also want to quickly clarify when I say no good reason, like it's talking about like just how like arbitrary and extreme this behavior is. It's not to say that there is ever a good reason for any of this kind of behavior.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess that's kind of like when I saw this pop up in like the Destiny community and the WoW community and stuff. The first thing I thought was, wow. Usually, if you go to those Twitch pages or those streamers or listen to any of those casts, you've got a lot of different, types of people represented. You're not maybe seeing this in the COD gaming community because it's so male dominated, for example, right? So it's weird that when you have that interaction that you start to see this stuff like kind of exponentially rise in a weird way, which is, it's bad in some ways, but also it shows that maybe that this community is a little bit more accepting in some ways. Like what you're saying with the Dark Souls community, it wouldn't surprise me if I went on Twitch right now and 90 out of the top 100 Dark Souls streamers were men. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I completely understand that, and I say that as someone who likes to speak to the positive sides of that community often because they tend to be overlooked. But no, it's a community that absolutely has that kind of problems of hierarchy and cultural misogyny.
And I think as we get more into the terms of how do we fix this, I think that's kind of the number one thing we can all maybe focus on is, okay, why does the Dark Soul community have to be all men? Or just plain up ask why. there's probably lots of, in the newspaper term, it's called below the fold. On Twitch, it's called show more, right? So once you get past those top, 10, 15 streamers, you kind of got to scroll to see the rest, right? And one thing I've found myself doing, especially, when I'm looking for Destiny streamers, or when I'm looking for, catch up on what's going on in World of Warcraft, for example, or a lot of the other games, I'm trying to go to that show more, and maybe get out of those people who are just big names, and see what some of the smaller communities are doing. And I think that's something that maybe, at least in the streaming line of this, that maybe that's what we can do to kind of, get a little bit of a different perspective in there and not give so much power to the same people who've always had that power.
That's a good point. Like, I think the part of the thing I struggled the most with when preparing for this episode is the sort of moving forward from our point of view as consumers, like how we can help. And I think exploring more diverse and lower popularity streamers, like, is actually a valid idea. Like, if you spread out the power, no one person has sort of monopoly over it.
Yeah, and the records of how, like, IGN's workplace environment has gone on to change with the I don't remember her name right now, but the editor-in-chief is a woman, and just like changing. Yes, thank you. Changing the demographics of leadership and improving hiring practices and such like that has substantially improved that workplace culture, and that's like undeniably something to acknowledge and appreciate. Although I'll also always be the person that, like, as someone from a few different marginalized backgrounds, like, there's only so much that can do. Queer people abuse queer people sometimes. Women abuse men, women abuse women. Like, that's that's not a cure-all either. Mariah Carey has
what happened at Mixer was
sexual harassment allegations against her.
Wow.
Sorry,
yeah,
who does?
Mariah Carey.
Mariah Carey. Yeah.
Yeah. Or like what happened at Mixer was a white woman making racist statements about a black employee.
Yeah.
Like, you can't eliminate discrimination or harassment just by putting, quote unquote, the right people in charge.
Yeah. It's the
also
more
kinda
women
have to-
prison guards thing.
Also, the timeline on this is almost like frustrating, because you'll see sort of allegations come out against people who are no longer in power. So as a consumer, like, what can you even do about that? I think the Cards Against Humanity one is a good example of that, where Max Temkin is no longer, like, paid by the company. He still has an 8th share because he was a founder or whatever, but, like, he's not in place anymore, and they've allegedly already improved their HR. Like, they've hired an HR firm like a year ago now. So, like, now it's like, oh wow, they were really shitty, like, objectively so, but now they're better, hopefully. I don't know. It's
I know exactly what you mean. One of the things that, when this came out, I've tried to kind of see what the company's responses are, or what they were, I guess, in some cases, when it originally came out. It's hard to follow sometimes, because some of it is, at a company level, like, almost like an HR thing. People can't talk exactly about what's going on or what happened. But it is something where I wish there was a little bit more transparency, so I could know, hey, is this something that they're dealing with legitimately, or is this something being swept under the rug? And it requires a fair amount of digging on your part, to be honest with you, if you do care. And I do, but it's not always right there in black and white for me to figure out, okay, well, what did they do when they found out, for example? I think one of the biggest ones was when this happened with OP Media Group, which I mentioned before, which is like a streamer talent agency, basically. They represent a lot of very popular, very influential streamers, right?
And there's their CEO, Omid Daryani, who was accused.
One of my favorite streamers is Kit Boga. He baits scammers and wastes their time and does funny voices and stuff like that. He was represented by them. So, of course, my initial reaction was, well, what is he going to do? Of course, he dropped them. He's a pretty stand-up person. So he dropped them. But it was interesting to see that it wasn't the angle that OP Media Group was going for. It wasn't that Omid wasn't a bad guy. It was more that, oh, well, he stepped down as CEO and now you're going to hurt all these innocent people, right? Which I felt, which I'm glad now that those streamers stepped away, because that felt like a different style of manipulation, right? Like, well, you know, hey, this guy was a bad guy. We knew about it. We didn't do anything. But on the other hand, think about all the innocent people that are going to lose their jobs if these people step away. Yeah, but he was the CEO. You know, that's a little bit different. But that's the kind of responses that I've tried to pay attention to, what companies are saying and more what they're doing when you see these kind of systemic accusations against them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and sometimes you can't always tell it just from a statement. Like Ubisoft, when the allegations against Adrian Gabingi and Stone Chin came out, they put out what most people would call a good statement about how they're going to handle this, but I don't know if I can hold them to that, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if they'll actually follow through. I don't know if it's going to change the company culture.
Exactly.
And now a lot of what I'm hearing, circulating on Reddit and Twitter and Reset Era is about how the Montreal development scene, which is probably the biggest game development scene in Canada. So you got IDIS Montreal, WB Montreal, and a bunch of other studios all there, in addition to Ubisoft. What's coming out is that everybody has a story about that scene, and that's worrying, because to me that indicates it's not just a couple of Ubisoft employees. There's something deeper and more insidious and more cultural there than just like two isolated incidents. And sometimes there are isolated incidents, but sometimes it really does come from a culture.
Yeah, and that kind of cultural and systemic reform is incredibly complex. Although certainly removing those individuals, like the guy on the Assassin's Creed Valhalla team who stepped down, like removing those kind of people is a good first step. But addressing the culture is undeniably a challenging thing. I will always account for that.
Just to clarify, the guy who stepped down from Valhalla, Ashraf Ismail, was not specifically accused of assault or harassment, but he was accused of serial infidelity and abusing his power to get into relationships and then lying about being married. But yeah, still not great.
No, not good. But my apologies.
Well, one thing I'd like to mention too is that it's been interesting to see maybe like adjacent companies or game companies or like sponsors and things like that respond as well. In some of the streamers' cases, you've been seeing people dropped by sponsors and things like that relatively quickly. And for streamers, that's a lot of their income. So if they're finding out very quickly that these companies that they have deals with aren't going to stand by them if they're accused of things like that. And I think hitting sometimes in a wallet sometimes changes behavior in the same way that hitting access or things like that to other games might as well. There's been more than a few studios who said they're not going to work with content creators who are accused of abuse and things like that. And getting your foot in the door and getting early access to things is how content creators kind of make their pay as well. So that's an interesting response to see, kind of a concerted effort to take away some of the clicks, the views, and the money from people who are doing stuff like this.
Yeah, and on that note, I don't want to say in any way, shape, or form that the response to this by the community has been ideal, but I've been heartened to see that people are actually are in large part taking these allegations seriously, which is not what I would have expected if this had broken 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
It's especially true in the Destiny community, which the only reason I keep bringing up is because it's kind of where this initially started. There was kind of a reckoning with one streamer who I do want to point out he wasn't like a huge voice in the Destiny community. He wasn't. I'd barely heard of him, kind of tangentially type thing, and I'm very involved. So, but to see him outed, and it was almost you didn't see hardly any pushback. You saw lots of community managers from Bungie come forward and say, "Yeah, we don't work with this guy. We haven't worked with him in a long time, and we're not going to. From the official company stance, people had known about his allegations for a while, but out of respect to some of the people who were accusing of him, they hadn't gone forward with the stories. They had just basically told him he wasn't welcome at lots of events in the future and things like that. But then to see kind of his name go public, and to see a lot of the streamers come out and say, yeah, he's always been a piece of shit, we never liked him. That's their words. I mean, they kind of laid into him. It was kind of heartening because I didn't see any pushback. I didn't see that. Normally you'd see, oh, well, they're doing this for clout, or they're doing this for views, or they're doing this to be, virtue signaling and stuff like that. I didn't see a lot of that in the community, actually. I saw a lot of, well, if this guy's bad and there's more like him, let's get him out and let's start, listening to the streamers that are saying these things or these accusations. Sarah Daniels, who's one I follow, she's very involved in the initial phase, and she said, well, don't act like you can't replace him, because you can be replaced. And here's, 10 women who do what you do better. And she's been very on that front tip of it. So I think that there's a lesson to be learned here for people. And I think kind of what you're getting to is, I think the days of people making excuses for this type of behavior, it's over. You get called out, and it proves, to be that you lose your sponsors, you lose your viewers, and you lose your community. Not many people are going to stand by you when you're accused of serious stuff like this.
Yeah, I can't say I haven't seen people trying to derail the conversations, like with just, mindlessly shouting things like due process and innocent until proven guilty, as if that has any actual, good faith relevance when you have people who are being accused by numerous, if not tens of people in some cases. But they're increasingly the minority, which is a heartening thing to be able to see.
Yeah, I thought there'd be, for instance, a lot more pushback when the Chris Avallone allegations came out, and instead it was just an avalanche of people saying, yeah, he's always kind of been a creep. I didn't know he was doing this specifically, but I can totally see it based on this other behavior I've witnessed. From him. Avallone
has had such a diehard fan base, but the sheer fact of the substantial amount of evidence and testimony on such a variety of people that have actually known him personally is incredibly hard to refute mercifully.
Yeah, and it makes sense too when you think about his career in a way, right? I mean, someone with that level of skill, right? I think he is a good writer. With that level of skill, never really stuck anywhere, always kind of bounced around, was brought in more as a consultant to kind of, add stuff to games rather than to actually do a lot of the, day in and day out stuff. I wonder if that was a more, less of a, we can get this guy freelance, and more of a, well, we're going to need to protect ourselves HR wise. Because here's what we heard about him, which makes me think a little bit more about some of the companies that have worked with him. If they knew stuff like this and they chanced it because they wanted the talent, but, was that the right call? No. So, in retrospect, it makes me regret some of the game stories and work of his that I did enjoy, retroactively.
Likewise. Yeah. Yeah, it's painful, not just for that experience of being attached to a story and being able to understand the kind of person that created it or was part of creating it, but the broader implications for Obsidian, is kind of the easy example to go for here. Is what did they know? When did they know about it? Should I have known about this sooner from people that are still there? There's a lot of stuff there that should be continued to be talked about and considered.
Yeah, that's the insidiousness of the open secret culture that you saw in Hollywood, and now we're seeing here, is that there's enough information out there that people know to sort of keep a foot in the door around these people, but not enough to actually bring it to light. It's kind of this what is the right move for them? Obviously, it's probably to just avoid people you've heard bad things about. But yeah, how does that come to light? Except for now it does, and now it has, and that's good.
Yeah, it's always this. I don't want to say it's a balancing act, but I don't think that this kind of rug sweeping is exclusive to like people that within our cultural sphere that we'd immediately consider terrible.
Yeah.
Like even to go back a few years, something that precedes this, when Tyler Mulca, the founder of, or head of NeoGAF, was when allegations against him came to light, those had been an open secret for years. I knew about them before it blew up, which is part of the reason I was a little bit miffed and annoyed when games journalists claimed they were blindsided. I was like, well, if I knew, how come you didn't know?
I understand that completely. I was someone who was trying to ring the bell on like Kevin Spacey and Bryan Singer for years, and getting just so much disdain from people in the community spaces we've been a part of.
Yeah, and it's especially hard when NeoGAF was considered a bastion of intelligent and progressive games discourse. And I'm not saying it didn't happen on the site, but they're also a site that defended abusers.
Yeah.
And it's really hard when people kind of hide behind this veneer of, for lack of a better word, wokeness. Like, oh, that person would never do that. They have all the right beliefs. But as we're seeing, this is happening kind of across the cultural and political spectrums within the games industry. And even people whom we thought had the right views or maybe had the wrong views, a lot of those people are having allegations leveled against them now. It's no escape, you know?
Yeah.
So I think one thing, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, is you know, why does this happen? Not just in the games industry, other industries as well, but specifically in the games industry. A lot of people have been talking about frat boy culture and toxic masculinity, and as Kappa mentioned earlier, some of this harkens back to like old style Hollywood casting couch type mentality. Another thing I wanted to bring up, and this is, I can't credit myself with these ideas. It's actually Brian Altano, who's currently at IGN. A lot of things he blames is kind of the precariousness of the work makes people exploitable. So you've got a bad managerial culture, and you've got, you know, poor job prospects and poor job security and low pay. People don't really have the power to go elsewhere, so they have to put up with it.
Yeah. Unsustainable environments and careers are especially more vulnerable to exploitation oftentimes. And like you're also seeing this with like the gig economy, quote unquote, of current day.
A lot of these people are like contract employees. They're not full salaried in some cases. You know, people move to San Francisco or New York, far away from their families. They don't have a support system. They're vulnerable because they're only like friends or work friends. And then what do you do?
And more broadly, I've grown increasingly unsatisfied with the use of a term like frat boy culture, because I feel like it actually there's a sense to which it like kind of like takes away from the agency of the perpetrators.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
The argument that like you're just fitting in, and that's not to discount the fact that like feeling pressure to be silent about something that you're seeing, that you're witnessing, is that's a very real problem for sure. But you I think I'll understand what I mean.
As the rare gamer nerd / frat boy, you know, I do know that like in especially in the fraternity I was in, you know, we had every semester 3, 4, 5 hour rape counseling classes. We had a nationals organization that oversaw us. There was levels of oversight there, you know. Obviously every fraternity is different. I mean, I think everyone will say that. Every school is different as well. But kind of pushing this off as, you know, frat boy culture, boys being boys, of course they're gonna stuff like that. I think is kind of denying that some of this stuff is rooted in like at very institutional levels and kind of enforced, especially on Twitch, by like systems that put power in the hands of people with no accountability at all. Whether you're talking
the institutional quality, but also the thing of like a person can very easily and very well know that what they're doing is wrong and just not care.
Sure. Right.
Yeah.
For sure.
And there shouldn't be systems in place that let that happen as long and unchecked as they want, until someone has to make a very tough for them Twitter post pointing it out. So I guess that's where I disagree with that aspect. I think that this is something where you got to tear things down to fix them in a lot of ways. That's kind of where I would go with this. This isn't a yes, there are issues with society and culture and things like that, but we can fix the fact that a Twitch host makes or breaks somebody, with 1,000 views, and then there's a lot of seeming reasons, whether it isn't even something as awful as sexual favors. It could just be money. Should a small streamer have to pay a big streamer $200 to raid them after a stream? I don't know. I think that still seems kind of slimy to me. It's not really promoting the best efforts. It's just money changing hands. And I can tell you that most streamers who did make it to that partner level, they remember that one person who believed in them, and they were having a good stream, and someone stopped in and they gave them that break, right? But for other people, the climb to the top has different ways. And I think that's something where if you're looking at stopping it and breaking things down from the streaming community, and even from some of the journalism community and the development community, I think you've got to look at the organizations themselves and say, where is this broken, and where do we break it even worse to fix it?
Any infrastructure that exists that enables abuse and exploitation is replaceable. Like, period. That's not to say it won't cost something, it won't take effort, but you can do it. It's sorry.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Absolutely is doable.
Yeah.
The question is whether people are willing to put in the effort.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be a little bit cantankerous is not the right word. A little bit irritated here and say people who are saying burn it all down without any suggestion for how to build it back up are not being particularly helpful. If you have concrete suggestions, then I think that's where we should be looking. So again, Brian Altano, his suggestions are mandatory managerial training, elevate more female voices, and make clear pathways for career growth. So you're not just putting a bunch of freelancers in the office and saddling them with low pay and screwing them over year after year after year. Will that fix everything? Probably not. But those are concrete fixes that can be implemented.
Yeah.
And
I definitely think that's fair to say. Sorry, go ahead, Lutair.
And I think there's not really there's not going to be a single magic bullet that's going to fix this. It's a systemic issue with many sort of areas that we need to address, and in the end, it's just people being awful, which is something that I guess we can't help. We can't make someone not a terrible person, but we can put systems in place to make sure, one, if they are terrible, they're caught as quickly as possible, and two, to give them less opportunity to be terrible. And I think there's a lot of interactions that we'll have to take a look at and see, is someone able to take advantage of this situation to be a monster? And if you're looking at a single organization, there's probably, several dozen things to look at there. And then you look at an industry and there's, hundreds, but that's why you have a lot of people working on this.
Yeah, a lot of what I've seen has been talk about how do we restructure and adjust industry events. How do we make those in particular spaces that are not only culturally better, but also not something that is so essential that is so necessary to participate in, and to participate in the ways that have been traditional.
Yeah, and it was kind of you would read so many of these stories and so many of these things, and it would start with at PAX or at E3 or
exactly.
And it seems like these trade shows are just being run by how drunk can you get journalists and streamers, and how many compromising situations can you put them in, and people who maybe don't have the best, I want to put this nice, maybe not the best social skills, slamming them all together in a place and getting them drunk, and then seeing what happens seems like a recipe for, not as an excuse, but just saying that, this is when some of the worst behaviors that were noted came out.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think of a lot of the trade events I go to, in my boring industry that I work in, and it's not like we go there and just get hammered and party. It's very much we go to, panels and meetings and stuff like that. And yeah, you can meet up with some friends for some drinks, but the atmosphere, I think, is something that was shocking, reading about how some of these parties and stuff go down.
The recklessness.
It's open bar and get crazy. So.
Yeah, and again, alcohol is another one of those things that's like, like that doesn't magically turn you into a rapist.
Oh yeah, I agree. I'm not using that as an excuse. I'm just saying that there's.
I completely understand what you meant. I just thought that was worth saying again because that's like been such a talking point in those conversations. I was saying like people are talking about changing the rules around like alcohol and how formal or informal or structured these events are. Like those are valuable ideas, but we can also like not pin all of the blame on this thing that has nothing to do with a person's behavior and choices.
Well, if anything, it's more like the fact that you have an open bar and this culture of drinking puts people into a position that's vulnerable for them.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. Yeah, the environment itself is something that needs to be adjusted. I mean, and this is obviously a conversation that's very specifically relevant. One of the main allegations against Avalone is like pressuring women to drink as part of like getting them to sleep with him.
Yeah, and a lot of the same accusations have that similar pattern of meet up at a con, get them into a panel or kind of show them what I can do for your career, meet up with me later and we'll talk more. And then it's open bar, it's plying them with drinks, and just kind of so many of them followed that same path. You're just thinking, what can be done to stop this? Because of course somebody wants to listen to someone who can help their career or has, or say they wants to mentor them or teach them or walk them through how they did it. People want to listen to successful people and try to understand how they did it. But, the way it's happening right now is just awful.
Yeah.
So that's so definitely kind of maybe closing the open bar at these like trade show parties might help. But let's be clear that alcohol is not the sole cause of this, and predators will still predate in the absence of alcohol. Just kind of makes their job easier, which is something that we can definitely curb. Other things that I think organizations should do, like obviously fire people who do this.
Yeah.
If you know they do it, and it sounds so simple, but it apparently worked at IGN. I mean, I can't speak to what IGN looks like now, although people who work there say it's a lot better than it was.
Yeah, the general on record is that it's improved significantly. But like that's it. It's not regarded as simply as it should be in the employment context that it's happening in. That like, when you're aware that a person is a problem person, that they're making the environment around them unsafe, just
get rid of them.
Just get rid of them. Whatever, like genuinely, whatever it takes. Like, this may be a cost to the development input. This may be a cost in a number of ways, but like it costs more to have an unsafe environment and to have people that need to leave potentially in droves because of one person or a handful of people hurting them than to remove that person.
That's a great point. Even when we brought up about Riot, 2 months ago, as far as I know, he's still working at that company for some reason, right? I mean,
the same fucking guy I mentioned, the CFO.
So, I mean, from a perspective of this is going to potentially cost us millions, and Riot has paid out. Like, it just makes you wonder, like, why don't you just fire them? I don't understand it. So that's a really great point, though, that how many companies just continue to protect someone. It's boggling.
One of my favorite refrains in like victims spaces, survivor spaces, is that like the consequence of the sheer number of potential great artists that have been beaten and raped out of an industry is so much more than any one great artist TM them's loss could be. Like the loss of their victims from this industry will always outweigh the one person who might be a great artist. Like there are hundreds, maybe thousands of potential great artists that are lost to abuse, that are lost to violence, that are scared out of industries.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I got intense there.
No, it is something that's worth being intense about.
Yeah.
The way I like to put it is, organizations are not houses of cards.
Mm-hmm.
They can suffer the loss of a problematic person.
Yeah.
You can take them out of the organization, and the organization can still survive.
Yeah.
If the organization can't survive when you take out that person,
Then
it's not a robust enough organization.
No. Like, yeah, both practically and culturally and ethically, like it's not worth keeping it in its present state if it can't survive without an abuser.
Absolutely. So we've talked about what organizations can do. As for what we can do as members of the gaming community, I think any individual action we do is obviously going to be less impactful.
Yeah, limited impact compared to what a system can do. Yeah.
But there are things I think that collectively our impact can have. Like as Kappa was mentioning earlier, just don't watch abusive streamers and Let's Players.
Yeah.
There are other people who do stuff similarly and about as well as the abusers.
Yeah. If Chris Avalone starts trying to get more jobs and he actually manages to secure one of them, don't support whatever product comes out of that, period.
Yeah, because now we know, now anybody who would hire him knows.
Yeah.
Right? There's no plausible deniability anymore.
Yeah.
The other thing you can do is, let companies know that you're not satisfied. The thing about bad PR is that it's not just about getting customers to stop buying products, because oftentimes, if you're not following the gaming community closely, how do you even know that this is happening? Oftentimes, it's about making a stink that this is a bad place to work at.
Yeah.
And if a company can't attract talent because it's a bad place to work at, then they're going to have trouble putting out the kind of products they want to put out.
Yeah.
So that's another lever we can pull on. And the last lever I want to mention is, you can support marginalized voices in gaming and read and listen to what women, queer people, racialized people, disabled gamers, read what they're saying about video games. Look at what they're playing and what they're saying. Listen to them. If nothing else, it distributes power. Anything else we wanted to mention about what we can do to kind of turn a new leaf in this chapter of the games industry?
I think something we can do is to sort of, if possible, keep the conversation going, because what was the phrase? Sunlight is the best disinfectant. I don't know if that's true, but sunlight is required to see the infection. And if we sort of let this die, there are going to be a bunch of people who continue to hire people who've been accused, and this sort of thing just perpetuates itself. And if we stop talking about it, then it becomes easier for them to ignore. I think that's important to sort of keep this conversation going. Maybe not every episode of this podcast, but generally.
Yes. A phrase I like is it's rather dramatic, but I'm a rather dramatic person. Is silence is suffocating for victims. It's very simple, very short, but hopefully it gets the point across.
Absolutely.
I think for one of the things I've tried to do, at least in my mindset, is be ready to burn my idols, if that makes sense. You can't cling to any one thing or one person so hard, that you'll accept behavior from them.
Absolutely.
And be ready at any moment to. I mean, Chris Avallone probably made 5 of the top 10, or not made, but had a part in 5 of the top 10 games that I most play and most love. So, but I'll never buy another game he's associated with again. So. You have to be ready to do that in a mindset, and you can't always make excuses. Now, I do think there is sometimes, that you do have to kind of consume media, understanding that there might be some aspect of it, but you have to decide what is best for you and things like that on an individual basis. But, once the line has been reached, just be ready to dump them, because you can't cling to that.
Yeah, we're all exist. We're living in a society.
Gamer Joker strikes again.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
There's a lot of shit there's a lot of different lines that can be crossed, and questions of, you can't actually opt out of everything unless you actually want to live in a redwood forest, and even then, also the way things are going, you're probably not going to get a lot of privacy or cutting off from things in a redwood forest either. Everyone has their own choices to make, but just care about responsibility. Have lines that can't be crossed. Be willing to take a stand when it's right for you. That's the least.
I mean, I can speak personally to this, and Cap can actually attest to this. My favorite album of all time was recorded by a band you might have heard of called Brand New, and when their singer Jesse Lacey was accused of soliciting nudes from minors, I have not spent a damn cent on Brand New since that came out. Because now I just can't. It's wrong, and this is the artist that recorded my favorite album of all time, and I just have to be okay with that. It's something you have to let go. So as Kappa said, burn your idols. Absolutely.
The emotional and physical cost of opting out on an ethical basis is in totality it can be a lot, but individually it isn't.
And
Absolutely.
I think acknowledging that it does, it's so minor compared to the perpetrations that these people have done, but it does suck to find out that someone likes an art that you have enjoyed is associated with a really bad person.
No, of course. No, everyone who feels pain and unhappiness for having that experience is that's equally valid. Of course it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's also happening to people who are survivors, like me. There's a lot of fucking Chris Avallone games that I liked, and I had already been distancing myself from him for political reasons, but this hurt a lot personally. So someone else who can say the same thing is perfectly and equally right to feel that feeling. Also, we keep using Avalos as an example, but I do want to just say it goes for all the guys from Ubisoft and that IGN. Some of those IGN people, I believe his name is Steve Butts, who has a publication job right now.
He has a game consultancy firm with Hal Blevins, who's another person who was named in the IGN.
Oh boy.
Scandal.
Both of those guys, that firm, not that us in particular are going to be probably interacting with that firm in any realistic way, but still.
Some of the stuff they made their employees do is just so mind-boggling. This one journalist, Mitch Dyer, he's no longer a journalist. He works now for EA Motive. He was talking about how they made him print an unsubstantiated rumor under his own byline, and that rumor has like reverberated through the games industry. It's actually something about Naughty Dog, and is basically essentially made up a feud between two prominent employees there that didn't actually really exist, or at least not in the way that was stated in the article. And that's messed up, right? To print a rumor that not only harms the journalist career but also the careers of people in the industry. Like, there's a responsibility to kind of be able to stand behind the words you print. And if these people are working as editors, that speaks to a complete, like, a callous disregard for the impacts of their actions.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah. So, I think kind of to wrap this segment of the podcast up, we've talked about, I mean, this has been really heavy. We've talked about like what's happening and why it's happening. Solutions are, as far as what we can do, don't support abusers. You can vote with your wallet. You can vote, if not with your wallet, by making a stink. I think these are things that we can do in the community, and now, unfortunately, because of the world we live in, we have to rely on more powerful institutions to kind of do the rest. So I would urge industry groups and companies to implement the required training for managers. You can't just Peter Principle your rank and file into management and then hope they'll figure it out. You have to elevate more marginalized voices to spread out institutional power. I know we talk about HR being like the thing that protects companies more than employees. Make HR less of a joke.
Yeah.
It should not be like any company where HR is a punchline at the water cooler is a broken company. Yeah. And needs to be fixed.
Yeah, the known flaws of HR as a system and individually doesn't mean that they can't be changed too.
So that's kind of all I wanted to say about. I mean, there's obviously a lot more that can be said.
Of course.
But I think for this episode, I think that's what we wanted to say about this situation. I'm going to personally keep an eye on it.
Likewise.
We'll probably talk more about it at some point in the future. And we just want to say, if you've been victimized or marginalized, we support you, and we hope that things get fixed. All right. So in the second half of this episode, we're going to talk about the summer gaming streams that happened. A lot of them to replace E3, which didn't happen this year, and the games industry didn't fall apart. So I guess this is going to only fuel the do we really need E3 anymore discourse.
I mean, and not unfairly so.
Yeah. So
also, sorry, but it is funny that like the single biggest event that we're going to talk about, like guaranteed, is one that wasn't going to be at E3 regardless, because Sony was already going to opt out regardless of the pandemic.
Yeah, so that was actually the PlayStation 5 showcase.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Spoiler alert. Sorry.
Coincidence.
And PlayStation definitely needed to prove themselves going into this showcase, because I think the narrative that kind of emerged around PlayStation was that they were pulling away from E3 because they didn't have anything to show off. They were refraining from talking too much about the PS5 because they didn't have everything finalized, or they knew that they couldn't measure up to what Xbox was pulling off.
The thing
and
about
it seems at least they'll have games.
The thing about
Sorry, go ahead.
Is that Sony's internal strategy created this narrative, these discussion of, well, where are the new games, where are the next games, why are they being so quiet and just doing like minor states of play every few months and a 9-minute Death Stranding trailer. Yeah, like that'd been the thing for years, and the payoff to that was, oh yeah, no, we've been withholding this info strategically to give all of it at once at the right time on our own terms, to make PS5 feel a little better than it actually probably is. And I mean, I think that mostly worked, for sure. I think in general that's a good strategy. I think that strategy speaks well relative to the kind of like drip feeding that a lot of companies are stuck on right now, by having to have been giving more regular updates.
I might be alone. I thought it was the best and it was good, but I don't think it was as good as it should have been, knowing they weren't going to attend E3 at all. If that makes sense. Like if this was going to be their one thing.
Well, for what it's worth, it's not. Like the thing that came out like I think in late May was that part of the reason it took so long to announce was because it was originally going to be like a 2.5-hour show, and then they split it like very late in planning. They split the last like third of it off to be an event in August.
Right. It was,
which I think is fine. I think it was fine enough on its own personally, but yeah.
It was. I think I'm probably where Merve is a cool reveal, but I feel like it was almost like a teaser for a game rather than a gameplay trailer, if that makes sense. Like it was just enough to get me interested, but it didn't sell me on a PS5 at all. I'm still not.
Oh, yeah,
super...
well, I was never going to be convinced to pay like $500 or whatever it's going to be at launch.
Right.
Like that's just not a practical possibility. So maybe that helps. That there's just the casual thing of just like, yeah, I could just enjoy it for what it is.
I think it's harder when some of the stuff they show is sequels or just games that are kind of like still fresh in people's minds, like Spider-Man and Horizon. Those are the two that kind of stuck out. I'm like, man, it feels like it could almost be DLC at this point. It's coming out right around the corner from the last popular iteration. I mean, I know they all came out a couple years ago, but
3 years for Horizon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still in the cultural zeitgeist.
Right. So I guess,
never faded. That's true.
I guess it's good to follow it up so quickly, but it also makes me think that they're probably going to have some kind of version, like similar to what Last of Us did, where it came out on 4, it came out on 3, right? And then it like right around launch, I think they said there was also going to be a Last of Us Part 1 for PS4, right? Like I remember it was
remastered.
Right.
But that's the thing. Yeah. Sony's actually been very clear that they're not doing that at all.
Yeah.
Like they're very firm on this. And actually,
I hope so.
Like I don't know. It seemed confident enough that I can take it at its word, which I'm certainly not always going to do with the company. But like no, like they want to set themselves as the counterpart to Xbox's like through line of everything can be played on everything we have available right now. For the next couple of years, they want to say like, no, these are PS5 games. They're just PS5 games. You need a PS5. Fuck you.
In some ways, that kind of sucks for me. I got a PS4 a couple years back or whatever.
Same. My girlfriend and I only got a PS. We only got a PS4 less than 2 years ago.
Yeah, and I've mostly used it to watch anime, frankly. I know that's on brand, but like I do play console games. I play a ton of Switch games. I've played very few PS4 games, and now everything's gonna be on PS5. And
yeah, I'll definitely be catching up on the PS4 stuff I had missed out on for a while. And for what it's worth, it's not like they successfully like forced all the third parties to go next gen only right away. Like a lot of the third party stuff in that presentation was PS4 and PS5 together, which fucking thank God.
Yeah, it's
literally 40% of the games I own for my PS4 are Yakuza games.
I think it's an interesting time just for consoles in general to see what happens with this generation. It's going to be, I think it's going to be the most divisive generation in a way. I think it's going to be the generation where people make that decision between PC, console, or just kind of opting out of gaming right now. Mm-hmm. I think my guess with PlayStation is that it's going to probably sell not as well right out of the gate, because I think a lot of people have just either are happy with where they're at in PlayStation 4, or just got into it, or are sticking with it, or using it to like as a media box along with their Switch or things like that. I don't know, just among my group of friends, how many people are right out the bat going to be buying either Xbox or PlayStation out of the gate.
Yeah, both companies have communicated that like they're like doing like strategically smaller like launch printing numbers to make it easier to be able to say, well, we sold out all of our launch consoles.
Sure.
Yeah, it's also like
also
like a logistics thing.
Yeah, with manufacturing.
You don't want inventory just taking up space because you could fill it with other stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, and again, like manufacturing safely right now is its own thing. Sorry.
Yeah.
On a personal level too,
Absolutely.
I hate the design, honestly.
Yeah.
I love it.
I don't. Vertical to me is just. Maybe it's like one of those like vertical mounting things just seems like so. I don't know how to explain it. I guess maybe when you have kids and it's just like always on the chance of like one run into the dresser or entertainment center away from being on the ground, it just kind of scares you a little bit more to see things like that.
Both.
Yeah, you want it to lie flat.
Yeah.
Things are,
I have
It can lie flat. It can lie flat. They have shown that.
Okay.
But yeah, that they're. Who has a setup where vertical stacking makes more sense?
Entertainment
like
centers
most-
aren't designed that way most of the time.
Yeah.
They usually have multiple shelves, right? You don't have
Ironically,
space
I
for
can
it.
actually testify on this sort of. It's probably not going to apply very long term because my partner and I are expecting to move to a new place because our new leasers kind of suck. But like we currently have two entertainment setups, a bedroom and a living room, and the bedroom one is literally a TV on the top of a bookshelf, and next to the TV is a Wii and an Xbox 360, both standing vertically because there's very little horizontal space on a top of a bookshelf. So
Yeah, I think
like
vertical makes sense.
barring
if it's
the
on
fact
the
that-
ground.
barring the fact that both of these consoles are probably heavier than an Xbox or a Wii, those
Yes.
could theoretically fit in this particular space right now.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's definitely a use case for it. I just don't think it's like the typical use case. You know what I mean?
No, totally. No, undisputable.
I think pretty much every entertainment center I've seen is based on like VCRs. Like a VCR fits
Yeah.
perfectly into any entertainment center.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, yeah, they made sure that these are horizontally capable. No, they clearly were kind of made to be vertical first, design like visually.
I think with the
they
curve on
also
the curve on the top.
take an insane amount of space horizontally, like even more.
Yeah.
Yeah, the PS5 is like I really like it visually. Like, granted, it is stupidly huge in a way that is like not super consumer friendly. Like, I don't know if that was avoidable with what kind of hardware they're pushing for, but still, because the Xbox is pretty big too. You know,
Yeah,
like we were talking
The
about.
Xbox is just a giant
Box.
rectangular prism.
Yeah, they're both PC towers. One's just fatter and one is thinner.
The number one thing I worry about whenever I see this kind of maybe form over function design too is I look at it, I don't see a lot of holes. And my PlayStation, when I use it, it sounds like a jet engine now. And I know I've got to clean it, don't get me wrong, but it's surprising that they're not thinking more a little about cooling, because I've heard that from lots of people that say that their PlayStation gets dirty and needs to be cleaned and does get louder and doesn't do great cooling.
It's a common thing with PS4 discourse for sure. And
the
Sony
PS4 is.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I was gonna say the PS4 is actually even much better than the PS3
Yeah,
on the whole cooling
yeah,
front.
I
Right?
got
It doesn't
PS4
yellow light of death.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to regress on that front is really bad.
So Sony has asserted that the internals of the PS5 should be much better on cooling and noise, but we can't know that for sure until we experience it for ourselves, obviously. But that's what they're asserting, that this design will be a significant improvement on that front, at least.
I just don't know if I can trust them when they've prioritized making it look like Eve is crushing Wally between her legs.
God.
Kinky.
I think it comes from me just recently building my own PC and worrying so much about airflow and cooling and stuff like that, because this newer editions of graphics cards are fantastic and they do a lot of things good, and having things like SSDs are going to help. But temperatures are more, I don't know, more finicky now than ever, almost, in a way. So I do worry about cooling. I think that it's probably going to be better to cool one way or another, vertical or horizontal. I think people will probably figure that out really quickly.
Yeah.
But having that solid top shell, and it doesn't look like it has any push-pull from the front to the back, I'm just interested to see if that's all cooling from the back. It's going to have to sound like it's a helicopter about to lift off to get that much airflow from nothing, from a negative airflow to the back. I think it's going to be something that you'll probably want to see in action.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So what do y'all think of the games they showed off?
I was really impressed, just generally. Like even as someone not super invested in the like PlayStation first party, like their general offerings in general, like not these particular games, but just like their series and kind of aesthetics typically. Like, yeah, I was interested in a Ratchet and Clank game for the first time ever. I think doing a Sackboy 3D platformer is a cool idea. It's by the guys who made the third Little Big Planet, which is like far and away considered the worst of the original game. So we'll see about that. But it's still
It really looks like
neat idea.
Super Mario. It really looks like Super Mario 3D World, but with a PlayStation aesthetic.
Totally, and it's kind of weird that that didn't like get finished sooner. I guess a take on that kind of that era of Nintendo game. But anyway, yeah, honestly, yeah, it was mostly like the third party stuff was really a really strong sell for me. Like the new Resident Evil looks amazing.
Yeah, third party for me as well, I think was the big selling point. I am interested in Spider-Man. I think Miles Morales is going to be a cool take. Ratchet and Clank did look very good.
Yeah,
Gran Turismo's weird.
Sorry. You finish. I'm sorry, I talk over to people too much.
It's okay. Gran Turismo's in a weird spot for me because, like I would say Forza, it always looks amazing. I've always been blown away by those racing game graphics and details and things like that. And then I know from me personally that I can't get into a racing game as great as they look and as fun as they might look. I just can't sit down and play hours and hours of Forza or Gran Turismo. So it was a cool demo, but I think I was pulled more toward the indies along with the third parties. I think there was some cool stuff that they showed that I was really interested in. Little Devil Inside, I think, was one of them.
Yeah.
I wrote
I've been
down.
talking about bug snacks nonstop.
I think we have Lutair on this podcast. We kind of have to talk about Bugsnax because he's like our resident Kira Bonito fan.
Yes.
Yeah, so Lutair, new theme song for you.
Yes.
Also, apparently you eat bugs and then you turn into the bugs, sort of?
Yeah,
I don't know what's going on, but I'm intrigued.
Your body gains the attributes of the kind of bug snack you ate, and also like, so yeah, the trailer like really doesn't tell you a lot. Like you can kind of glean like, oh, this is probably a Viva Pinata alike, sort of. But it's mostly just a bit just selling like the aesthetic and the tone than anything. But they have since like been a little more transparent about like explaining how it works, which is that like your character gets invited to this island of the bug snacks, which has a cool name I'm not remembering right now. When you come to the island, the person who invited you, the like Australian, you know, like you know what I'm saying. Fuck.
Walrus, otter. I'm not sure what they were.
The weird like walrus-esque crocodile hunter. Is that the name he had? You know, the guy that died, Steve Irwin. There we go.
Steve Irwin.
Yeah.
Crocodile Dundee is the character.
Yeah. There's Crocodile Dundee, but there's another like his name was like Crocodile something. Like that was his show.
Crocodile Hunter.
Yeah, Crocodile
Yeah, Steve
Hunter.
Irwin, Crocodile Hunter.
Sorry about that. Anyway, the point is this: like you're invited to this island by Walrus Steve Irwin. When you get there, she's gone missing, and there's like it's kind of like a mystery, a conspiracy of trying to find her while also like interacting with the environment and the animals and like capturing them and studying them and such. Like if there's like a trap, like trapping the animals is a major like gameplay component.
So it's like a puzzle game.
Yeah.
Kind of, like a puzzle adventure game.
Yeah,
That's
basically.
what they've described it as.
Sorry.
I'm just I'm always intrigued by games that just go for broke doing something really weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like that's what intrigued me about it.
Yeah. Yeah, you have
it's
that.
just
You have the Anther dinosaur like lesbian romance visual novel question mark.
oh yeah, Goodbye Volcano High.
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks way up my alley.
Right.
Which is possibly a weird thing for a straight cis guy to say, but fuck it, it's up my alley. I want to play that game. Stray looked cool.
Stray,
He plays a cat.
yeah.
Everyone
Yeah, it
wants
was
to play as a cat.
it was just a cinematic, but it was a cinematic that sells like its pitch so well, and it's such a solid pitch that it really worked for most people. And I'm someone that doesn't mind cinematics as much as others, but yeah, just like I am the cat. I am the
Yeah.
cat
Yeah.
wearing a cute little backpack. Fuck yeah.
And setting like the aesthetic tone, I
Yeah.
like really dig the like weird real robot head guys.
Yeah, the robots were cool.
Oh yeah, because they have the faces. They're like the. Do you remember that level from Titanfall 2 with the robots that had the faces on their chests?
Yeah.
Am I misremembering
Yeah.
that? That's what it kind of reminded me of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that aesthetic. It's really fun.
Totally. And I do want to say like the first party stuff is definitely well sold. Like it's not going to be enough to make me spend way too much money more quickly, but it's still like Horizon looks as cool as a series I haven't played can look. I'm extremely excited for the Demon Souls remake. No surprise to anyone here.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's a nice like varied like well polished first party lineup undeniably.
Yeah.
I think.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. sorry.
The Spider-Man game, I'm a little bit sad because
Yeah.
like it looks gorgeous. Don't get me wrong, but like I kind of wish they went with the aesthetic from the movie. I
Yeah,
feel like that would
agree.
be really cool. I don't know, that'd be much harder, I'm sure, but like it'd be really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be especially weird, like as a sequel to the first game that
Oh, yeah.
came out slightly before Spider-Verse. But
Well,
like
but
certainly
then
they can at least do like costume support, like the first game had the Sam Raimi outfit and all sorts of stuff. So they'll probably do something like that.
It would be kind of fun if you did like Into the Spider-Verse style Miles Morales, and then you can just play as Spider-Man from the original game in that style. Like he's just out of place because he doesn't belong in that world.
Yeah.
Just get like just find a way to bring Jake Johnson.
Yes,
in. That would just make me happy.
dedicated schlubby middle-aged Peter Parker aesthetic I'd be super into also.
The two I kind of bounced off of or didn't really grab me, I think would be Ghostwire Tokyo. I'm still
I liked the Ghostwire trailer, but I'm the minority. I think Merve also said that he didn't think it looked particularly impressive.
It just looked boring, which is not what I want to feel about that.
Yeah, I thought like the first person melee and like psychic powers stuff. I thought that looked cool enough, and like the general like aesthetic also.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair.
And then Godfall I think was one that I was.
Oh fuck!
It doesn't it?
Sorry.
At first I thought.
That's not like, oh, I thought this looked better than you did. That's like fucking Brandy Pitchfork or
Yeah.
Randy Pitchford, friend of the podcast.
Yeah.
I'm kind of glad that it coincided because at first I didn't know what it was. You know, I think they were trying to.
Fun fact, that was announced at the Game Awards last year. That was one of the like only relatively high profile announcements, was a PS5 launch title multiplayer melee game by Gearbox, and then and that left, for a number of reasons, left so little positive impression, and then it gets brought back and still this is one of our launch titles. It's gonna be a relative big deal, but it's still a mediocre Gearbox game.
it looks bad in a lot of ways. That I think it's going to be interesting to see if it's one of those flops at the Alien Colonial Marines level for Gearbox. I'm sure they still got money to print, but
I don't think it's going to be like that. It just seems like a game that's.
I doubt anything could be as bad as Colonial Marines.
Yeah, to me, it looks like a game that's less than the sum of its parts. Like it has almost that platinum style combat. Mm-hmm. You know, 4-player co-op games can be fun. I like the aesthetic, but none of it looks like when you put it all together in a blender, it's just not something I want to
Yeah,
play.
it doesn't really gel well, and then that's on top of the fact that friend of the show is a huge piece of shit.
It's kind of reminiscent to me of you guys remember Rise?
Oh,
yeah.
Is that Rise?
Son of
with a
Rome.
Y? Yeah.
Yeah, with a Y.
Yeah.
It does.
It kind of reminds me of that as a launch title,
Yeah.
where it's like, what do we got to do? We got to do something that shows this off, and we just make a hack and slashy type
Yeah.
thing to put it out the
Just-
door.
A total belly flop, a big
Yeah.
budget belly flop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did anyone else think that, like, on hearing the title, think that it was like Titanfall 4?
I thought it was in the God
I've
Hand series, actually.
I was never going to have faith that EA would allow Respawn to do an actual Titanfall again. So
Yeah, Apex Legends is going to be the thing for a while. I thought it was a God Hand thing at first. I don't know if God Hand
like I said, I recognized it from the Game Awards. Like
Right.
that's the only reason why I
Yeah.
knew what it was immediately.
Yeah, I didn't remember or was announced. I just remembered that it existed. So I'm like, oh fuck, it's that. Game.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was my reaction.
I guess the
Fox,
next
Fox.
one was the PC gaming show, which what are we doing?
So I'm just gonna to lift back the curtain for a second. When I sent out the show notes to everyone, I think what I wrote here was, "How the fuck was this 2 hours and 20 minutes?"
Also, like you can go to the PC gaming show live thread like archive on the Avocado. You can find me and Merve just going absolutely fucking insane together how boring it was.
You can hear it.
Like we
Like you can see me
objectively-
screaming
yeah.
like,
Objectively, we were more entertaining than that show was.
"What the fuck were they doing?"
Oh no.
It was pre-recorded.
Yeah.
How is this possible?
It was
Yeah.
so long and so shallow, and the one more thing was like a retro like 2000 horror game, which is like I'm into, but also how is that your one more thing?
There was some good stuff announced or showed there. I do think they had some neat things to show, but it almost could have just been just a block of trailers, and I would have been more happy with it, to be honest with you.
Its better stuff was shown off better elsewhere. Like another thing that we said, like Chris Tales had an actual gameplay showcase at the Future Game Show.
Right, right.
Um,
This one, there was a couple ones I wrote down that I didn't think looked cool. Evil Genius 2, I'm excited for. I'm not gonna
Oh, sure.
lie.
That looks pretty hip.
Yeah, I didn't even know Evil Genius existed actually, but
Yeah, I haven't played.
yeah.
is it kind of like Dungeon Keeper?
Yes,
or
it's
like...
exactly like Dungeon Keeper, but with a Austin Powers-y Dr. Evil type bent to it. Very, very funny, subtly
Oh, nice.
humorous game.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm so
Yeah, I
sorry.
believe it. That's fine.
I thought
We can quote.
I thought it was pretty cool looking. Dwarfheim was another one. There was two Heim games I remember writing down. I wrote Dwarfheim. I don't remember the other one, but that one looked pretty cool. Project Wingman. I think there needs to be more Ace Combat type games for sure. So that one made my list. And Rogue Wars. So those were the ones I wrote down, and I went back towards and enjoyed looking at. But I think some of those might have been PC gaming, and some of those might have been in the other after show.
Yeah,
So I don't know if everyone's
a lot of these are cross-platform.
right.
Yeah.
I wrote down Forgotten City, Haven, Chris Tales, and Twin Mirror, and those last three I already knew were coming out. So Forgotten City was the only like new thing for me.
On that note, I have notes about Forgotten City because it was in the IGN Expo stuff. Did y'all know that started as a Skyrim mod?
Really?
I
Huh.
did not,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, that
now
was-
looking at the aesthetic, it makes
Yeah,
sense.
like it was just like I'm just gonna make a mod that expands on the murder mystery quest lines from that game, and then it like got a bit big enough scope that they're like, you know what, I should make this into its own thing.
actually really cool.
Yeah, no, I never cease to be impressed by what like the modding community like manages to produce in terms of like what becomes a totally new thing in the last like 5-ish years.
It was a weird show again. I think that's something everyone would agree with. I remember when they they showed, I think it was that Amazon MMO. What is it called? It's most
New
generic.
World.
New World.
Yeah.
New
Yes.
World, which we also talked about earlier this year.
Yeah, it kind of felt like, okay, so what we're doing is this is kind of like, hey, remember these games in some ways. Like it's games that we probably announced somewhere more special, and then the PC gaming show just ends up kind of being the, oh yeah, remember this thing we announced or this trailer we already leaked in the case of Elite Dangerous, or you know, these things that it's kind of almost an update on some of the games rather than actual like new trailers in some ways towards the end. I think that's what they were banking on for maybe some of the bigger attention drawing announcements.
Yeah.
But they didn't manage to get any of them,
No,
which
they
is
didn't.
what made this year particularly worthless.
Oddly enough, the thing that most drew me was New Blood's like announcement of like, hey, we have games on Steam or whatever. They showed, I think, Unfortunate Spacemen was the one. It's basically like the Thing multiplayer game, and they have like not super high budget. They're an indie studio. I think they did like a brief video where the guy just talks about shit.
Yeah, the most common like end of presentation title card I've seen this summer is not "it's available now" or "it's coming out soon," but it's "wishlist this on Steam," and I just find that the most depressing fucking thing on the planet.
But yeah, I started playing Unfortunate Spacemen because of that, and that's pretty much the one that I remember the most.
Good.
Advertising works.
Yeah.
It's
Who
been
would have
out for
thought?
4 years or something.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we should also. It probably merits saying like the one like genuinely impressive thing that happened in the PC gaming show was the Persona 4 Golden Shadow Drop, which got leaked to high hell, but is still cool conceptually.
Yeah.
And hopefully like speaks to going forward like improved like multi-platform Atlas presence. Of course, Atlas then proceeded to like totally burn away all that goodwill by coming to the New Game Plus Expo with just 30 minutes of gameplay from Catherine, a game from 2011.
There was another one that was a Civ-like game. I didn't catch the name of it. I think it looked almost exactly like a Civ mod. Did anyone catch that one?
I was actually somewhat interested because I like Civ, so I can't remember the name right now though.
I think one of the dangers with these trailers and these highly stylized, almost things that they leak, these 1 minute perfect YouTube length type things, is they sometimes forget to tell you the name. It almost seems like you remember the visuals and things, and you go, oh wow, it looks like a new Civ game, and then you maybe don't catch the name, and it's just now I have to go back and look through. When they announce 80 things all at once, I'm like, which one was the Civ game? Because not all of them always link to the post. So if anyone caught that, let me know what it is.
I should also have said, like, yes, Persona 4 Golden is also an old game, but it was an old game that was only on one fucking long dead device, so it's very different than Catherine, which is already on everything.
The name of the game was Humankind, which is probably why we got it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was confusing it with Ancestors: The Humankind Odyssey.
Yeah.
My bad.
Patrice Desolé, not a Ubisoft game.
I would
2K game.
2K
That's a
game.
game I would love to hear anyone talk about in their Let's Play, because I am so curious in that game and how it goes. But it looks interesting. I just don't know if I could ever sit down and run with it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I thought that the I don't know, like the pace of the show was just so slow. It took me out of it. I found myself just second screening the whole way through. It was very tough to make it start to finish through the show. So that's, I think, why maybe I'm trying to play catch up on some of the things that I thought I saw but don't really remember. So.
Yeah, I would have enjoyed it a lot more without
died
that.
if I hadn't been live chatting that at the same time. Like if I didn't have an outlet for my anger.
Yeah. That
I think
that was incredibly fun. Like I'm gonna remember that for quite a while. Just you and me, just bitching for 2 hours together.
Like I think what really boggles my mind is that they've had 6 years to get this right, and they still
Seriously.
can't get it right. They're very married to the idea of doing the interviews and the trailers separately, and it just takes so much extra time, and they never divulge any interesting information in the interviews. It's just dead air.
Yeah.
I don't know why they keep doing this. Also, speaking of interviews, they didn't interview a single female developer during the entire showcase. If it's 2 hours and 20 minutes, like, what the fuck are you doing? This is 2020,
so
man.
many
Come on.
dozens of games. Like, that shouldn't be practically possible.
Like, yeah, it's not like it's not even practically possible. You're right. It's so ridiculous. Also, while we're complaining, what the fuck was that Mortal Shell demo?
Oh man, yeah.
Shit.
What the absolute fuck?
I actually, until you said the name, I kind of, but yeah, I completely remember the one you're talking about now.
Yeah, that was some of the dullest rendering of Souls-like I've ever seen, and I've seen bad Souls-like.
One avocado commenter described it as Dark Souls by way of Life of Black Tiger, and that is probably the most apt description I've ever seen.
But I don't know what Life of Black Tiger is.
Life of Black Tiger is an infamous PS4 game that, for some reason, was prominently displayed on the PSN store, but was of the level of quality of a Steam Asset.
Oh, excellent. Cool. That's very apt then.
I think we've all been trained to know that when they're doing those weird, like very, very, very dark, like battle arenas, it's to hide issues with the game or things like that, that the game doesn't do well. But it was like a fight, if I remember right. It was like a fight
It was
in
a
a
boss
lake.
fight.
Yeah, surrounded by nothing.
Very slow boss fight, and there was barely any movement. It was like walk towards you, one sword bonk, back up, sword bonk. Like, yeah, like it really
There was no,
the greatest possible
parrying,
like
blocking, dodging, nothing.
Yeah.
It was literally just trading blows and like taking the hit. Like the guy wasn't even
it
defending.
was the worst possible
What the
rendering of what Souls like gameplay.
Dark Souls,
could
but you never dodge.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember as soon as you said that title, I was like, oh yeah, now I remember.
Oh, I just remembered one that I had a little bit of interest in. It was Icarus. It's like a survival, but like you have 20 to 2 hour sessions. One, do you guys remember that?
I remember the name and I don't remember what the game was, but I know that a game named Icarus or something
They
like
did
that
an
was mentioned
interview.
at some
It was one of
point.
the interview sections, and basically it's like Minecraft or Ark or whatever, where like you set up a camp and stuff. But it's set up so that you drop in, and then you have a mission.
You drop into like a planet.
Yeah, and then you have to get back to
Yeah.
your ship, and you can die and be revived. But if you don't get back to the ship, you lose everything. And that looked kind of interesting.
That was
Yeah, it's Dean Hall's new game.
Was that the original? There was a game that was the original design. I think that Anthem, that was the original design of Anthem.
That was the original design for
That's
Anthem,
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is by DayZ creator Dean Hall,
Yeah.
and I actually did want to mention this because I specifically remember commenting that Sean Plott, the host, asked Dean Hall, "What are you going to say to people who have lost faith in you because of what happened with DayZ?" And he gave like the worst possible answer. I'm like, this is pre-recorded, man. You have complete control over PR here. How can you give such a bad answer?
That's really interesting, though. That I remember when we talked about Anthem. I remember saying that the original design to me was more intriguing than what actually came out, and it's going to be telling to see what happens with that game, because I was really intrigued by that idea. The original concept for Anthem, if you don't remember, was that you would go out into the area that's basically the desolated apocalypse, and it was how far you could make it and return each time. And it was almost like like a gamble to go as far as you could, get back as many items as you can, fight more and more dangerous enemies, and then still return with your items intact, or lose them all by going too far. I thought that was a really intriguing idea that was probably scrapped along one of the million changes that game went through. But that's what this Icarus game sounds like, and I think that's going to be a neat little experiment to see how it works out.
I'm intrigued. I just have zero trust in Dean Hall.
Yeah.
That's what it
Daisy
boils down to for
was a
me.
concept more than a game, and this sounds pretty similar. Because I mean, I have a lot of negative thoughts about Anthem and Bioware, but if they couldn't make that game design fun enough that it was the one that got scrapped for whatever Anthem actually was, I'm not confident that Dean Hall can do the same or pull it out when they didn't. But like I said, I do want to see. Yeah.
Yeah, it's at the very least a very interesting like concept of a game, if not it depends on the execution for how good it actually is.
It's one that we've had that survival run of games for a while now, where survival games have been more and more a thing. Or I don't know what you call extraction games have kind of popped up here and there too. I just wonder, it's such a natural fit for a sci-fi style game. I just wonder why we haven't seen more, because it seems like a game type people would probably enjoy.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk a bit about the Future Game Show, which also happened on the same day, June 13th. This was a cross-platform showcase, unlike the PC Gaming Show, but it actually did have a lot of overlap. Mercifully a lot shorter. I think it was just an hour. And what they did here was, instead of showing the trailers and the interviews separately, what they really did was just have developer commentary over gameplay footage, which I think was a lot more effective than having Sean Plott talk to people.
Yep.
It's hosted by Nolan North and Emily
Yeah,
Rose, whom you might know as Nathan Drake and Elena Fisher.
Pleasant surprise, I thought. I don't know. I wish they would have got more games, because I enjoyed my time watching it a lot better. And it was a breezy feel to it. It seemed like it wanted to get to where it was going quickly. I thought the idea of having them talk over the game was very smart. Combining the two
totally.
rather than having them separate. When I'm watching a gameplay trailer, I think everybody's kind of on the same page with it, but I don't necessarily need to see every sound design and music cue and stuff. I can see what's going on enough, and if somebody's explaining to me what's going on, I'd rather get that as a scene setting than just a silent video and then later on hear somebody tell me what was going on or what I just watched, if that makes sense.
Yeah, pair the visual with the vocals, and then I know what you're describing, and it's also just so much more efficient. If the PC Gaming Show adopted that format, it would be 40% shorter.
Right. Yeah. And I think this was in your notes, but one of the things that it did also have the effect of, though, having is that while it didn't feel rushed, it felt like they were giving the game its time, but they were keeping the show moving along, and it didn't feel like there was all these ups and downs and slowdowns and hype mixed with whatever the opposite of hype is.
Despair.
Yeah, exactly. I
That's
was like, oh no, now we're gonna let this guy talk about this for 20 minutes. But yeah, I thought it was a good show. For me, this show kind of came out of nowhere. I didn't really remember that it was even a thing until it actually started. But I was pleasantly surprised by what it was. Hopefully that this is to me, if I had to say, hey, if you could pick what the future of E3 looks like, this show kind of had it all for me. A light amount of hosting. They talk about the games, they show the games, and it's moving along. It's not just sitting there, sitting there. So I enjoyed the show a lot, honestly.
I also want to point out that Games Radar accomplished in 1 year what PC Gamer couldn't in 6.
Yeah.
So
and Games Radar has always been, I felt like, kind of an under the radar site that's done relatively consistent reviews, at least in my opinion. I think their reviews have always been pretty good, but it seems like this is their chance to kind of take over from that vacant GameSpot throne that I think has kind of just died out, and then a little bit of PC Gamer thunder, where I think PC gaming was maybe more of a print thing, and Games Radar is taking over. It looks like this was a very good show.
One of the few sites that really successfully pivoted to video.
Yeah.
Along with Giant Bomb, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Just as far as stuff that intrigued me, Ghost Runner looked pretty cool, and Cryst Tales looked pretty cool, but those are both games that were announced elsewhere.
Yep.
Dustborn. Looked really cool. And that was the game from Red Thread. So that's Ragnar Tornquist's studio, the folks who made Dreamfall chapters. So I'm just intrigued to see what Tornquist pulls out next, and Dustborn looked like it's going to be kind of a Telltale-ish game, but I always thought that the Dreamfall chapters
That's what that one is. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was blanking on the title. Yeah, no, I thought that looked good. I want to check it out.
Yeah, I really like the Dreamfall chapters take on the Telltale style formula, where yes, it is extremely narrative heavy, but you're also not just making choices. You're also kind of solving puzzles and interacting with the world in a more meaningful way. That really appeals to me.
One of the ones I wrote down was Morbid. It was maybe a touch too edgy for me, but I really like the look of that as a like a weird dungeon crawler with a sanity meter as you delve deeper and deeper into a crazy dungeon with like a Diablo overhead, but like a pixel art look to it. I thought that was a pretty interesting look of for a game. I'll be keeping an eye on that one.
Somewhat reminiscent of Darkest Dungeons, right?
Yeah, but mixed with Diablo. It's got like a item management system much like Diablo, and it's an overhead hack and slasher with itemization and stuff. But a dungeon crawler that can mix those two, I think, might have some potential.
Absolutely. Any other games you folks want to mention from the future game show? All right, let's talk about EA Play Live, which happened on June 18th. So this happened.
It was
at least it was only 45 minutes.
It was not nearly as long as the EA thing I watched last year. It was fucking agony.
So I think the most notable, before we get into whether it was good or bad, spoiler alert, it was bad. The most notable thing from this conference seems to be that EA has basically abandoned Origin.
Origin had got to a point where it was bleeding money, and they're abandoning ship for EA Access instead. That's it.
I've got an interesting take on Origin. I think what's happening too is I think that Origin was almost too good of a deal, where I was getting 5-6 EA games worth for the price of one in a I don't know how to explain it, but I'm not buying Maddens and FIFAs and all these other games because I just buy the pass, and that means that they're losing however much money that I'm spending alone. So I wonder if it was just too good of a deal to keep. I'm talking about the Origin access.
Yeah.
There's that, and then the people that just couldn't get past the broader gatekeeping of EA. Gating of EA products, which is why they're now all on Steam.
And it's ridiculous because now Titanfall 2, since being placed on Steam, has become a top seller on Steam, which is ridiculous.
Maybe I can finally play Dragon Age 2 and 3.
Exactly.
It strikes me as so weird because I bit the bullet. I downloaded Origin and played my games on there. I downloaded Origin a few weeks ago so I could play A Way Out with a friend.
I used Origin exclusively for doing the importing your save data from Dragon Age to Dragon Age 3, or however that whole system worked. That was the only thing I used Origin for.
I think I got it because I wanted to play The Sims, and I didn't get it for Dragon Age because I was just mad at EA at the time. But for The Sims, I'm like, okay, that's.
Oh yeah, it took a while longer for it to fully sink in how just fucked over I was on Dragon Age, because I got the fucking Xbox 360 version, and where they didn't release the DLC on that platform, on the previous gen platforms. Sorry, that's very tangential, but I have a right to be mad about it.
I think you do. Yeah,
games are important.
I was broadly more, I guess, positive about the idea of multi storefronts than other people, because I did think Steam needed to kind of be brought into line with modern consumer accepted standards. I mean, when Origin came out, Steam didn't even have a refund policy. And I think
absolutely.
I think Origin kind of bullied them in a way into that, where they had I can't remember what it's called, like it guarantee or something like that.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing is like Origin was my first digital storefront. I got Steam like years after it, so I have like it's just so like such a small investment on my part that it all looks insane and terrible to me. But it's a bit of a different experience for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think EA learned some lessons, and I think they maybe overestimated their own ability to be a draw. And I think they kind of paid for it. And I wouldn't be surprised if Ubi is the next to kind of come back in line. It sucks because I don't want Steam to have a monopoly in a way, but I also don't want these other stores to be, half baked. And it seems like instead it's going to boil down to maybe Epic versus Steam, and the other two being kind of a tug of war in between.
Yeah, no, it is.
The thing that.
Sorry, you go ahead, Murph.
What I was going to say is, the thing is, Epic is, like, in its current state, more half-baked than Origin
definitely.
is.
Yeah, Epic so
and
bad.
the only reason that Epic's been able to get a foothold is by throwing around a lot of money to get third parties, which EA never invested in. And if they'd gotten those third-party games, this might be an Origin versus Steam fight now instead of an Epic versus Steam.
Does Steam do like exclusive third-party licensing at all?
I've never heard of
No,
it.
that's the interesting thing.
Yeah,
like that's
I
why.
appreciate that, honestly.
And I'm gonna be a little bit of an ass
Well,
right now.
what they do is absorb things and make them exclusive first party.
Yeah,
The
but
tendency to buy
that's
the company.
rare by comparison.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm gonna be a little bit of an ass now. I think it's not a good faith argument to say that Steam has exclusives when there is no contract that forces people who sell on Steam not to sell elsewhere. Right? That is not a good faith or accurate argument.
That's true.
And like there are so many problems with Steam. Don't get me wrong. On this podcast, I have complained incessantly about Steam. But the whole idea like, oh, Steam has exclusives too. Why are you complaining about Epic exclusives? They're not the same
I wasn't
thing.
trying to make that comparison for what it's worth. That was mostly me complaining about Campo Santo being.
Oh, absolutely. You're not. I know you're not making that comparison. It's just a comparison that I've seen out in the wild so much, and it's so frustrating because you can make so many good arguments against Steam. Why is the lie your go-to argument? You know what I mean?
Which is the same thing that Epic kind of gets. Like so much of the grievance expressed against it are not the good reasons for criticizing it as a service or a company.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Absolutely.
The grievances against Epic are some of the ones that are the exact business model that Steam followed when they started out. I have to activate my game on Epic. Guess what I had to do the second I got Orange Box home? Orange Box was the first game where I bought in a store and I got home and I said, where the hell's the CD? There's only this little code in here, So some of the same practices are what Epic's doing, but they're doing it with a storefront that wouldn't have been acceptable really 5 years ago, much less right now. So they're kind of clawing their way to the top. I think they've got more than enough money to do it. That's going to be the thing.
Yeah,
and
they've stabilized the interface at least. It doesn't randomly crash anymore.
And at the same time, I think you're seeing a generation of gamers almost who have no ties or love to Steam as anything but a storefront. They aren't Valve to them. Do you know what I mean? They haven't played or they've heard of, but they maybe don't have the same experiences we do with things like Halo or not Halo, Portal.
Half-Life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Valve isn't a game maker to them; they're a store, and people don't tend to be as loyal to stores, long term. So we've always talked about Valve needs to get back in the game making business, and I think that's even a truth for where Steam goes in the future. Because I'm just telling you from the perspective of my kid and all his friends, they're on Epic. I don't even know how many hours a day because they all play Fortnite together, and then that's eyes on the Epic store at that same time. And to them, Epic is the company that makes Fortnite and they love Fortnite. So he's got a lot more brand loyalty kind of building in his little mind, towards Epic than he does for Steam, which is the thing that he has to click on to play Destiny in his mind.
Good guy Valve is not a meme for the younger generation.
Yeah.
That's a millennial meme, not a Zoomer meme. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So as for what else was kind of announced at
Oh,
the
yeah.
EA Play, So only 3 new announcements. It Takes Two, Lost in Random, and Skate 4,
Yep.
which is probably the thing that was most exciting for a lot
Yeah,
of people.
Skate 4 was a big thing, but it came with the asterisk of we're basically just starting development on this
Yeah.
now. So
And-
it's going to be a while.
I think that, and there was maybe like a 2-second shot in a video of a Dragon Age looking thing.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that they
they're-
tweeted out later that was Dragon Age.
Yeah, and they're like are just like vaguely alluding to like what's for Series X and PS5. Yeah, there were 2 screens from Dragon Age 4 in there potentially.
Yeah, Dragon Age 4 is one of those weird things that has been announced but has never received any like official announcement. Like it's just a thing that people who work at BioWare have confirmed exists.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's-
it's
so
something
it's
that it
weird.
feels like we probably literally the only reason we're publicly aware of it is because of that like quick animation that was at the Game Awards a couple of years ago. And if
Right.
EA had a way, that wouldn't have happened, and we'd only hear about it in like 2 more years or whatever.
What if they combine it with Elder Scrolls 6?
That's you have no idea just how much of a negative that is for me.
That's like pooping in my chocolate ice cream.
What if
So-
you're in the
And,
middle of a conversation?
I'm already skeptical about the chocolate ice cream.
Yeah.
I guess the biggest news for most people was Star Wars, but for me it was my man Lamar Jackson being on the cover of Madden. I can't be more happy with that. I hope he avoids the curse.
Oh yeah, Star Wars Squadrons is a thing.
Yeah.
That got
That was actually announced
Yeah.
before
Well,
the presentation,
got
but yeah,
leaked.
they showed it off there.
it got leaked, and then they're like, okay, yeah, it's real, and you can look forward to learning more about it in 3 days.
I think the 2 things I really liked learning about it. One is crossplay. Crossplay needs to start being the way forward rather than the exception. You know, I can't wait till the day that that's just assumed to be in the game. And then I like that there was a story mode to it. I don't know why I hadn't assumed that there would be one.
Yeah.
Maybe from the initial release, I
Well,
took away.
the guys who are making Squadrons are the guys who did the Battlefront 2 story mode.
Mhm.
That should give you an impression of what it'll be like.
Yeah, it gives me an impression. I don't know if it's a good one, but
Yeah.
I don't know why I originally walked away from it thinking it was going to be like Rogue Squadron, you know, which was a great game at its time, but I couldn't tell you the story for the life of me. So I'm glad to see that there's actually going to be, you create a character and you go through the story as your own character.
Oh yeah.
Star Wars to me is a video game property in a lot of ways in my mind. It unfortunately. So I mean, I want to see what kind of freedom they're allowed to have with telling a Star Wars story, kind of outside of the House of Mouse Star Wars world that's kind of developed. If that makes sense. A lot of people did love. I can't even remember the name of it now. The
Rise of Skywalker.
no.
The Last Jedi.
What's the EA game?
Star Wars Jedi
Yeah,
Fallen Order.
Fallen
Oh,
Order.
Fallen Order. Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of
Yeah.
people love that one, but it did in some ways kind of feel like it was outside of the universe of Star Wars. So I do want to see what this one kind of brings together, because it does look like it's a little bit more tied into the universe.
Oh, yeah, we can also say definitely a significant chunk of EA play, even if it wasn't that exciting, was basically like committing to the idea of we're done dragging our feet on Switch. Like the official logline was 7 games in the next 12 months will be EA games will be released on Switch. One of them being Apex Legends sometime in the
Apex
fall.
Legends, yeah.
Burnout Paradise Remastered is the first one to actually release. That was last week. By all word, like a perfect port. So that's nice at least. Then there's a
At least
couple
they
of
took the time to get
exactly yeah. There's a couple of EA originals. Lost in Random are those are on the list of ones that'll be on Switch. FIFA, which is FIFA, and then the last 2.
it right. Yeah, but they're getting like the
Yeah,
shitty gimp
the
version,
Legacy
right?
Edition, yeah. And then the last 2. And to be clear, like half of these were official, half of these were reported by Jeff Grubb recently. Whereas, an EA original, a Need for Speed remaster, and Plants vs Zombies Battle for Neighborville, which is one of the multiplayer shooter ones, not the actual exciting one.
I wonder wonder how
So
come
not
this-
not a super impressive lineup, but ideally like it's a start to build off. You know.
I wonder how they haven't figured out that The Sims would be
Seriously.
literally perfect for
Holy shit.
for Switch yet, right?
It's
It seems.
insane. Yeah.
I've long thought about that one, and I mean, it just seems like Animal Crossing is kind of in that same vein, and it's taken over conversation spaces for games for a
Animal
while now.
Crossing has been so big this year that it has already made Nintendo more money than their mobile Animal Crossing game had in 3 years, and also had exceeded their lifetime expectations for it.
Right, and you can't see that as like a built-in user base that is interested in that type of game. And you said, "Wow, Sims would
Exactly.
sure be a good fit on the Switch."
Exactly.
And
Although I talked about how that's not a super impressive lineup for the next year, and it's not. But there is one thing worth acknowledging about that too, which is that that PvZ shooter is the first Frostbite game to be on Switch, and reportedly a lot of EA dragging their feet was supposed to be that they were having trouble getting Frostbite to have like proper like functional support on Switch. So the fact that they've apparently resolved that is hopefully good news for stuff like, I don't know, like an older Battlefield or RPGs or whatever. Hopefully. And sorry for interrupting again. But I have
Yeah,
a hot-
so as Kappa said, Sims would be great on
Yeah.
Switch. It seems right at home on that console. I'm not like I don't think they're gonna bring any of their big recent action games there, but yeah, their older stuff is right for ports.
Exactly.
If you can bring LA Noire there and do well on sales as 2K did, then it makes sense to bring some of the action games from like 5-6 years ago.
Exactly.
So there are a couple of other shows that I watched. I watched the New Game Plus Expo, which made me die inside a little bit. I also watched Night City Wire, which made me die inside a little less, but still kind of die inside. I don't know how much I want to... The only thing I really wanted to mention about New Game Plus Expo, which was supposed to be centered around mostly Japanese games, is that first of all, it was almost impressively lazy in how it was all shown off, and just it just didn't feel like they were showing off anything vital. Like the most salient demonstration of this was that they brought on Kozutaka Kodaka, who's the creator of Danganronpa, to celebrate Danganronpa's 10th anniversary, despite the fact that he had a new game coming out in literally 2 days.
Oh man.
Yeah. He could have talked about Death Come True, and they did not even mention it.
That's depressing.
Like, why would you do that? It makes no
That's not
sense. We've been celebrating
It's not
Danganronpa's 10th anniversary all
It's
year.
not respectful to him, and it's not respectful to the audience that would like to know that game's coming out.
Bring someone onto the show. Remember when you were cool? Oof.
Remember when you worked on
Oh, the
Jada?
other thing that I wanted to mention,
That's-
and Bones mentioned it earlier,
Yep.
is they did a post-show stream of various video games. And the Atlas's post-show stream was literally 30 unedited, uncommented minutes of footage from Catherine Full Body, a game that is already
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Man.
A game that's on every platform, barring the Switch release that's in a couple more weeks. But still.
Yeah, I wonder
Yeah,
how many
like-
new fans Catherine is gaining over time. I feel like it's
I understand
Actually-
it did well on Steam.
did.
It
Yeah.
did well on Steam is what I'm understanding, yeah.
Jam, I think, is getting new body because she had played the original but never beat it because like a friend of hers had it, and so she's like, "Oh, I can finally beat this game."
The one thing I'll say on that is like that's less probably on New Game Plus and more on Atlas, because that's the most Atlas thing to do in the world is to take the momentum of a Persona 4 Shadow Drop and do the best thing possible to kill that momentum dead. Like these
Atlas
are
is
guys
working on...
these are guys who do announcements for the dates for the announcement of the next date to get the next tease. Like that was the entire cycle of Persona 5R getting announced. It was a nightmare.
So that's the thing that's really, really frustrating, is that they could potentially announce a Persona 5 Scramble localization,
Although
which
I do think that's coming.
we don't even know if that's coming. Then they have 2 RPGs in the works, one of which they haven't talked about since announcing
Shin Megami
it, which is
Tensei
Shin Megami Tensei 5. Like, what the hell are they doing?
Yeah.
I don't like. Okay, game development takes a long time, and they need to synchronize development and marketing, and I get that. But don't waste everybody's time with half an hour of unedited gameplay footage. It's that's an insult to the audience that's tuning in. You know, if you don't have anything to show off, don't show anything off. That's what
I did want to bring up one thing that you posted on the preview or whatever you call the agenda. I watched that same thing you did about Cyberpunk 2077 with brain dances, and you had
2077.
Yeah, you had the exact impression I did, which was this looks boring. It looks like they tried to fit a Witcher thing into this game, and then. Or maybe like the Witcher detective mode, Batman detective mode, into this game for almost very little reason, and it was something that the first time I saw this game said, like in a way that this gameplay might not be what people are expecting if they're just taking some of the Witcher ideas and slapping them in the middle of a different setting. It looked tedious in a lot of ways, and something like as a gameplay thing that I think a lot of people moved past. So I was really surprised that was something that they chose to show with the game again being delayed, and hopefully, kind of in that final stretch still. I'm not sure why you would show an investigative type gameplay that I think people didn't enjoy the first time it came through in Batman, and then didn't enjoy in The Witcher, and to see it even highlighted here just felt strange with a game that was so close to its release window.
Yeah. There's literally just one Batman game where it worked, and it's the one that everybody dislikes, and that's Origins. Was the only Batman Arkham game where the detective segments were worthwhile,
more fully integrated.
Yeah, and here they just looked so tedious, like you said, and I don't know why they went with this as their big showcase for Night City Wire Episode 1. I'm not going to watch Episode 2. You're wasting my time. I know that now. And the really sad thing about this is I went and read and looked at preview coverage of the game on other sites afterwards, and I'm like, why wasn't that what you showed off? What these people played? Why wasn't that what you put out into the world? Why'd you put this out for us?
Yeah, I've been down on Cyberpunk pretty consistently on this podcast, and not for reasons related to whether or not the gameplay is impressive or whatever. So I just want to say, like they've made a thing out of like we're like really going intensive on the character customization system to try and address like some of the criticisms people had, and they've like published the details on that now, like which has already become a meme. There's 5 pubic hair options in the character customizer. Shit like that. But the thing about that is that is that if you look at what they're actually saying as a trans person, you're still not going to be impressed, because they're like, okay, well, you can have genitals regardless of what like gender your character is officially, and that's great. That's an inclusive design choice. But the thing that determines what gender your player character has is whether you choose a deep or high voice. And you all listening to me now as a trans woman on this audio recording can see why that's a fucking problem. Sorry.
Yeah,
that's self-evidently not fully inclusive on trans representation, even though that's what you're billing this as.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah,
great,
and I
sure.
don't find it fun to have to be the trans person to complain about games being bad about trans people. Like, I'm not doing this because I enjoy it. I'd love to just get to be talking about like the what was it, the new Don't Nod game with a trans character, and have nothing but good things to say about it. That'd be nice. I'd love to be able to do that.
Tell me why.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this industry puts people like me in the position where we have to put up to talk about this. Like, it's not on us. And that goes for
Absolutely.
Last of Us 2 too. Just saying.
I think, and please tell me if I'm speaking like over the line here. I think people would be a lot less skeptical of all this, or consider it a lot more of a good faith effort if they hadn't had the previous PR stumbles.
I think that's fair.
kind of
Yeah,
led
well,
here.
yeah, I think of it as more than PR stumbles, but yeah, that's completely fair. Like the thing about
Like they have a lot more to prove
Exactly.
now, and they didn't prove
yeah,
it.
like CDPR has had a history of getting called out by marginalized groups, and each time they try to show how they've improved in response to that, they've kind of just stumbled again, and that's not very encouraging. There's no reason that should be.
Yeah. So I guess what I want to say about Cyberpunk 2077 is, like, I'm not. The weird thing about all this PR game is that they're doing a worse job of selling their game than third parties
Yeah.
are, and that's not like a great sign for their PR and marketing team.
It's not a good sign
It's
for a
weird
game.
when
If a game can't
Yeah.
sell itself as well as a publisher. No.
that's bad when like the big PR event you're using to sell me on something is making me go like raise an eyebrow, but then like streamers and other people who've played the preview build are like, oh yeah, I did this cool thing and that cool thing and that cool thing. I'm like, you can show me the cool thing, you know?
Yeah.
And
Understand your own product and your own audience well enough to know what you should be presenting as the selling points for your game, if nothing else.
Yeah, it's a strange thing because I think that people want any game right now to kind of have a sense of what it's going to do and what it's going to be and be able to show itself, right? That was always the big thing, hey, we're just going to show a trailer and let the game show itself. But they've had to do so much with marketing and talking about it and stuff. And it's a game that literally should be, here's Keanu Reeves doing something. Just go watch this, It's almost the exact opposite of Death Stranding, right? Where they showed us and then told us nothing. And then it feels like Cyberpunk, they tell us a bunch of stuff, and then what they show us doesn't really...
It's also the opposite of Death Stranding in that I was always enraptured by the PR of Death Stranding, and then I played it and I also liked it. Death Stranding, a game that's good for trans women? Question mark.
yeah, Death Stranding was
Death Stranding has issues, but
it has a lot of issues,
I just wanted to
including
do it, mostly.
representational
Yeah.
ones. But
Kojima's
that's a game that I did not expect to enjoy and ended up enjoying.
Kojima's gender politics are complicated, to say the least, for sure. I don't want to diminish that in the least. I wanted to do a bit.
Yeah, for sure. So there are a whole bunch of other shows. I don't know what you folks watched and didn't watch.
I did all of the IGN Expo stuff, but so much of it was like not to be, I'm very pro indie. I like focusing on indie devs and indie publishers when I can, and like oftentimes they're what attract me more over like the bigger stuff. But at the same time, like IGN Expo was basically like C-list news. Like nothing was really big.
Yeah, and I'd kind of expect that from like a media organization because, like the big publishers are going to want to exert control that IGN is not going to want to.
That and clearly Jeff Keighley was just the person who was actually able to like really secure good contracts with all these publishers the way E3 wasn't and IGN wasn't. For whatever reason.
Jeff Keighley did. What was he in charge of over this? He had a stream.
He's had all of the Summer Game Fest branded stuff, which is a lot of it's been Activision. Interestingly, like that's just been a consistent pattern with the Tony Hawk remakes and then Crash Bandicoot 4. Oh yeah, that's the one that happened recently. Is Crash Bandicoot 4?
Oh yeah, that exists.
Yeah, it exists. We're not exactly the foursome to talk about Crash Bandicoot 4 probably, but it's a thing. It's coming out in 4 months.
I've never seen. How do I put this? it's really not hard to get me interested in playing a 3D mascot platformer. This might be the first 3D mascot big 3D mascot platformer that got shown off, and I was like, you know what? No, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to dismiss the clearly existent Crash audience that made this game happen. Also, the same audience that's calling out this game for being called for and dismissing a bunch of in the middle like sequels that were not like so uniformly unpopular that throwing them under the rug entirely made sense. But yeah, like the general like the classic Crash thing of it's 3D, but you're running forward along like a track without a lot of divergence is not super appealing to me. That feels like it's kind of going against what's optimal about 3D platformers, like what they allow you to experience and design.
It really feels like every level looks like the pre-boss fight levels from Mario 64.
Yeah.
And not in a good way.
And and that's not even entirely fair to those boss platforming gauntlets either. Like those are more interesting.
Like, and especially coming on the heels of like the Sackboy game with kind of similar gameplay being shown off earlier. Like this just feels like it's stuck in 1999 and they just got their hands on like a graphics enhancer.
It's also literally set in 1999. Like that's the whole bit. Is that it's about being still in the 90s physically.
Oh god, I don't want to see any bad 90s nostalgia jokes.
Seriously. Also, that doesn't seem like the most respectful thing to the current audience of the series either, does it?
Yeah. Here are a bunch of jokes from before you were born. It'd be like, I don't know, it'd be like somebody making a game targeted at my age group, and it's just a bunch of like shitty 70s references.
I was thinking of it more like it's literally like telling people that are keeping this series going that they're stuck in the past. Which is like, I mean, I may believe that, but I don't think that's a good thing to say to their face from the game they want to play. Anyway, this whole section might be not well received at all by Crash fans, so sorry about that.
Yeah, the one Crash fan who listens to our podcast is gonna be like, "Fuck you guys." That's cool. We love you still, as long as you're not a jerk. We still love you.
Yeah.
We're just skeptical of your tastes. They had a bunch of other showcases too. I don't know what else you folks watched. There was Escapist, did one, Guerrilla Collective, which was again a bunch of indies. Steam Game Festival, Upload, 2 Pokemon presentations, new Pokemon Snaps coming out.
New Pokemon Snap and a Pokemoba.
Pokemoba.
Is anybody gonna play the Pokemon?
I probably will.
I'm confident. I'm confident it will at least be successful for like the first 6 months. Is how I put it.
I feel like you could put that name on anything and it's gonna at least sell at this point.
Yeah, like every Pokemon thing has done okay.
Yeah.
That's the weird thing about Pokemon. Everybody seems to hate every entry in the franchise, and it still sells.
Right, exactly.
Oh man, I hate how Dexit completely ruined the sales of Pokemon.
There's always like a huge drama, at the beginning when it launches, and then by like the end, it's like, well, I bought it anyway, of course.
Yeah, the vocal minority is like constantly a thing in this industry, but especially for Pokemon. Yeah, Sword and Shield just behind the first 2 gens for sales at this point, by the way.
Wow, there you go.
That's actually way more than I thought. That's nuts.
I mean, for what it's worth, I think that speaks at least as much to the Switch itself than to the games. And I liked the games fine. I've been clear about that. But yeah, like the Switch as a platform, like carries games in an incredible way. Like in a way that the Wii could not sustain this long. Like the Wii was already dropping off by this point in its life, and the Switch is at the top of its game. Nintendo stock is at the highest it's been since 2008. Not that I give a fuck about stock, but Like,
Yeah, I really don't care as long as the company keeps existing and keeps people employed.
totally. Like, but
I don't really care what the executives get paid.
but it could be an
Um,
interesting signifier to understand where they're at broadly, contextually speaking.
Absolutely, yeah. At least it's some indication of confidence that people have in the brand.
Exactly.
And the last thing I wanted to mention, which I didn't watch because I just don't give a shit about this game, but there was an hour and 30-minute long, I forget how long, presentation about the new
Avengers
Marvel's
War
Avengers
Table.
game. Yeah.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, the only actually like distinct bit of news that came out of it was the popular camp supervillain MODOK's presence in the game's story, which had already been leaked. So,
Because we already knew that Kamala Khan was going to play a big role in the game, right?
Yeah, that was.
And she's a fan favorite.
she's
so
great. Yeah,
I guess.
yeah. The one thing you can say for Avengers is that at least they're doing the next gen free upgrade thing.
Yeah.
They showed a co-op,
good for them.
co-op thing as well that just looked so like not even half baked, like a quarter baked.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure what they were trying to do with that.
It's crazy that I know we've basically said this before, but like it's truly crazy that like that was, as a thing was announced. Like Square Enix is making a big budget Avengers game, and
Right.
it was radio silence for however fucking many years, and now we're only a few months out from presumable launch, and it's just the most underwhelming fucking thing.
But just when you
That's
combine
so crazy.
that franchise with a video game, I mean, it should just be a license to do whatever you want, you know? And it's just how it feels like they've missed the mark so many different ways on this one.
Yeah.
Like aesthetically, gameplay wise, it looks like Anthem crossed with Vermintide and not.
No,
in a good
and I
way.
mean,
What is the good way of that? Sorry.
there's even some features that look very mobile-ish in a way. Like the itemization just looks like, okay, well now this went from white to purple. Is it better? I don't know. It's got bigger numbers, but like if I'm Hulk, do I punch harder? Do I get, like what does it do?
Yeah. When I mentioned that, and I'm sorry I cite this. Sorry, Kappa. You can finish your sentence.
No. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, the reason I say MODOK got leaked is because the full list of achievements for this game got posted in May, like right when it got delayed from May to September. And like just based on what they've shown since that, like it's totally legit, and it was never a very unrealistic offering of info. It was like it's like 5 story achievements and then just grindy bullshit. Like this game is exactly what we all thought it was at E3 last year.
Yeah, they tried to dress it up in different clothes, but I think everybody got it right off the bat, and it's unfortunate because we deserve, I don't know, this sounds a little entitled, but there should be a good Avengers game. It's ridiculous that there isn't.
There's no good reason there shouldn't be a good Avengers game on the strength of both the brand, the MCU thing itself, but also like more generally like comics being fun and making for intermittently like more consistently like in recent years like good games, Spider-Man.
Right.
I wasn't
Batman
a fan of any of the Batmans after the first one, but yeah, yeah, those two.
But that's absolutely fine. But those are games that were allowed to kind of do their own thing, and this seems like it's so beholden to the movies without being able to actually do anything for the movies.
Arkham Asylum was in some ways quite innovative for 2009. And this thing is the opposite of innovative, it feels like.
I think one that flies under the radar, we're just talking about good comic movies, is there was a Deadpool game that had kind of a similar feel that just said, hey, just do what you want. What would Deadpool do in a video game? And there's some cringy moments, don't get me wrong. It's not perfect. But
it was spiritually apt, basically.
Right. Yeah.
It's a fairly boring hack and slash, but it gets the job done. It's not like it doesn't feel like something that was shot out of a corporate house.
Exactly.
Remember that Wolverine game? Like there was a Wolverine game specifically licensed to that absolutely god awful Origins movie, and that game was like pretty well liked at the time.
Yeah.
As like a solid hack and slash.
I mean, there's a blueprint out there to kind of do these games, and it feels like this feels like they looked at that. What was that Diablo Marvel game that existed for a while?
Ultimate Alliance?
No.
Okay.
I think it might have just been called like Marvel Heroes or something like
Oh,
that. But it was literally just like a Diablo game where you like swap in and out characters. This game feels like like that there was a potential for it to be that, and then they lost their way, and they went with like I think Merve was saying they went with the movies, but not too much into the movies, and the whole thing just it looks like a mess.
yeah.
I'm not looking forward to it at all.
Yeah, it is also like, even as someone who hasn't even played that crop of new Lara Croft games, like that, it's surprising to come from those guys too, right? Merv, you liked the new Deus Exes. Like, how is this from the same people that made that?
Yeah, and I say this as someone who thinks Human Revolution is one of the best games of the past decade, and someone who liked Mankind Divided more than the critical consensus around it. And someone who liked, I haven't played the other two recent Tomb Raiders, but I have played the 2013 one. I thought that was a great game. And I see none of that DNA in these games.
Exactly.
Like, this does not play to the strengths of either Crystal Dynamics or Eidos. This is not what a studio like that puts out. This is something that you pawn off onto Turtle Rock or somebody like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's not what they do, and I understand why this is what came out.
You know, I think of do you remember High Moon Studios when they redid those Transformers games a while back? That kind of just blew the doors off of Transformers games. I thought about them. I think it was like Fall of Cybertron. They also did that Deadpool game. I think about that as a studio that's like, maybe we don't talk about them as much, but man, what could they do with this property if they could make Transformers feel new and fresh and exciting, and you know, so many other things. I just wonder why nobody bounced this one off of a studio like that to sit there and say, hey, you know, help us figure out how to tell a set piece story with action and memorable characters and get from point A to point B and make it feel cool and fresh. Even the multiplayer in that game was fantastic for what it was. So I really wonder why nobody looked at a studio kind of similar to that. We've talked about studio mismatches before with like Anthem and things like that, but it can be so apparent to fans and everything. I just wonder why it isn't at a higher level where somebody said, why are we giving the Avengers license to Crystal Dynamics? I mean, they're not a bad studio in any way, but
to two studios, Crystal Dynamics and Eidos, that specialize in very intricate story-driven single-player games. And that when it went to those two studios, I thought, okay, that's the kind of Avengers game we're going to get. I thought, okay, maybe it's a little weird for an Avengers game, but when it came out as just this 4-player co-op nonsense, I was really surprised. This is not the strength of those two studios, and now there are games that are not getting made, like new Deus Ex games, because they're working on this crap.
Right, and what we've talked about is this is, I mean, it won't be in this case, but this is a studio killer. This is the kind of game where you pay for a huge license and it telltales you, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know anybody who, if people remember this game is coming out, I don't even know if they're excited for it. If they do remember it comes out. So, I mean, it's in a bad spot. And I'm sure someone at Crystal Dynamics is really regretting either taking it on or being forced to take on this project. But
I mean, Crystal Dynamics and Eidos are first party at Squeenix, so I don't think they're in danger of necessarily shutting down. But it's gonna suck when it doesn't. Like, people are going to lose their jobs over this if this doesn't do well.
This could definitely have consequences for Square generally.
And like, as far as reception, the weird thing is the YouTube comments on this were all positive, and like, I'm not just looking at comps, I'm looking at like to dislike ratio. So whoever's paying attention seems to like what they're seeing. I just think people have stopped paying attention because it just looked bad initially. Yeah. So I guess we're maybe not the audience for it, but I just don't think the true believers are a big enough audience. Maybe that's me typical minding.
I think you're right. If I had to put money one way or another, I think you're right too. I think it's good. the scary thing about these types of things is when a game like this flops, how many of the wrong lessons get taken, right?
Yeah.
Does it become people don't want an Avengers game, or does it become people don't want this Avengers game? And that's a real thing, because sometimes it's comic. The reason that we've got the MCU is because people assume that comic movies didn't sell, right? And then guess what? They sure did. You just had to do it right. And I hope that's the lesson that when this game does flop, which I think it will, I hope the lesson that they walk out the door is, hey, people do want a good comic game, and they do want to play as the Avengers, but they just didn't want to play this game. So,
and we've seen comic games work with the recent Spider-Man game, with the Batman Arkham games. We've seen that people will buy these things, but you just have to make them
Good.
worthwhile. Yeah, you have to make them good. You have to make them worthwhile experiences.
A Spider-Man movie won an Oscar not that long ago.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is
And
not a game
ostensibly-
for this moment in superhero media.
Something that's kind of like frustrating for me is like the idea of this game. Like if you just sort of gave me the basics, I would say I'm all for it. But like it just doesn't look like a good version of what it could be. Like multiplayer co-op Avengers game sounds awesome, right? At least to me. But,
No, it doesn't seem satisfying for the co-op element either, including
yeah,
the part
exactly.
where the story isn't co-op. The co-op is all like side
Like-
shit.
Yeah.
There are a lot of games where I'm like, that's not for me, but I'm glad it's getting made and it looks interesting. And like 4-player co-op is generally not for me. But when I'm looking at this, I'm like, even if this was for me, I wouldn't care.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the impression I'm getting.
Yeah. And what's I think painful too to watch is the initial reaction was negative. Every follow-up reaction has pretty much been negative, and they haven't been able to shift opinion one way or another in the social spaces I've seen to really counteract any of that. So
Yeah.
if you're not building hype for a game starring Avengers by now, I mean, what are you even doing? So I'm not optimistic on this game, and I think it should have been shown everywhere they could have shown it if they were optimistic about it. But the fact it kind of got its own little war table show is probably not a good sign as well.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, like, despite the fact that most of the reception on the video was positive, the absolute number of likes and dislikes was really, really low. Like, compare this to the Cyberpunk 2077 stream, and it's an order of magnitude difference in the views as far as I remember. But I'll have to look again. I'll check.
Yeah,
back
if you hadn't told me about the war table, I would not have known about it.
I didn't know. The only reason I knew about it is because I went to a thread on Reset Era that had the list of basically all the summer gaming presentations.
Same.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason I know.
It was published under the Marvel Entertainment YouTube channel, and I think, I mean, it didn't even net 20,000 impressions, up or down. That's not.
Oh, wow.
I mean, so it's got 13,000 upvotes and 500 down, which isn't bad, but I think the thing about that is you would like to see that number be far, 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 far higher.
Exponentially. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
when
this is a tiny
yeah,
percentage
it's
of
the absolute numbers.
Yeah.
And, like, the ratio is fine. It's the absolute numbers.
this is
way
a
off.
tiny percentage of what the theoretical audience of this game is.
right.
Yeah. Absolutely. Anything else you folks wanted to mention about summer gaming streams?
Whew, it was a lot to take in.
I
I'll
could
tell
have
you.
talked about the Sony one for another hour, so it's best to stop now.
Yeah.
Just the one thing I wanted to mention. I think we kind of a little bit alluded to this, but is this the death of E3? Things like that. I thought I would be more excited to watch it this way, in a way. Just kind of as stuff comes out, watching it, listen to it, streaming it, things like that. The hype wasn't there for me this year, like at all. I think about. Like, just overall, I'm not saying for any one particular thing or any company or anything like that, but this is a new console gen. This is lots of new exciting things are coming out, and I just didn't feel it. Like, I don't know if that means I'm conditioned to like something like E3, where it feels more like an event and everything happens at once and you're watching it for 2 or 3 days and there's hype and excitement around it, or if it was just
there's definitely value.
right, or if it was just this was a learning experience the first time for a lot of companies, and they haven't felt or they haven't learned yet how to build that just yet. So I don't know. I originally
I think it's a combination of both.
Yeah.
I think so too, and I think that if they stick with not going to E3 and this continues to be a thing, I hope they learn from some of the lessons they did this year and figure out how to kind of get, I say hype, but maybe kind of like a more natural excitement over stuff.
From what I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
From what I'm seeing, yeah, there just isn't the degree of audience engagement they really want or need that I honestly would have expected. I'm satisfied with the way this is, but yeah, it's clear that the overall there needs to be improvement to just reach the overall audience better and to let things not fall through the cracks more.
Absolutely, yeah. All right. So just to call us to a close, if you'd like to keep up to date with the podcast, you can follow us on our website at avocadogamescast.wordpress.com, where we post each episode along with a link dump to fact check what we say on here, like relative numbers of views for streams, which I have to remember to go look up. You can also subscribe to us on iTunes. Just search for Avocado Gamescast. I'm currently working on getting us on Google Podcasts, but there is a complication there, and it might not happen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, folks. Also, make sure you check out The Avocado at the-avocado.org. It's a great community of people who want to talk about movies and music and video games and all that fun stuff.
We're basically
And just for this,
PC Gamer Magazine.
So go ahead.
I think it was about that. That's
Magazine.
magazine. We're like a magazine, but with more fruit. And just to close, we'd also like to thank you, our listeners, for taking the time to hear us talking about some pretty sensitive topics. I know we discussed a lot of really heavy stuff today, and we're grateful to have a venue where we can hash that all out. So I'd just like to say, if you remember nothing else from this podcast, remember this. Call out bad behavior if you see it. Support marginalized voices, and most of all, be kind to each other. Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for this conversation. This was great.
Absolutely. Have a nice day, folks.
Take care.
Yep.